I want to start today by asking you, the listener, to just look at your hand.
Just hold it up right in front of your face.
Yeah. You can see the lines on your palm, the texture of the skin.
Maybe there is a small scar from when you were a kid.
Right. And you know it's your hand. You know the exact story of that scar.
You know how it got there.
But if I asked you where that knowledge is, where does the you that knows all of this actually live?
Most people would just point to their head. They would say, it is in my brain.
They would. And usually when we think about the brain holding on to things, holding on to memories or facts or the image of that scar, we use these very static metaphors.
Mechanical metaphors.
Exactly. I was going through the stack of research we have for this deep dive today, and I kept seeing this one idea repeated, the filing cabinet.
It is the classic analogy.
Yeah.
You have an experience, you write it down on an index card, you open a metal drawer, and you file it away.
Right.
And there it sits, unchanged, collecting dust until, 10 years later when you pull it out to look at it again.
And what is fascinating, and also just a little bit beautiful, is that the research we are observing today suggests that metaphor is entirely wrong.
Entirely.
The brain is not a filing cabinet. It is not a hard drive. It is not a video recorder saving files to a disk.
It is much more like a biological storm.
Yeah.
It is a wet, living, simmering network.
86 billion neurons.
86 billion.
Yeah.
And they're constantly tearing themselves down and rebuilding themselves. It is a dynamic landscape.
So that is our mission for this deep dive. We are not looking at the psychology of memory today. We aren't going to analyze nostalgia or trauma in the abstract sense.
We're looking at the wetware.
The physical biology. We are going to trace the physical journey of a single memory. From the split second it hits your senses, through the chemical changes in your cells, all the way to wherever it ends up permanently.
We are just going to be observers today.
Just watching the machinery work.
Because when you actually slow it down, the process of storing a memory is incredibly complex. It is a 4-stage relay race. And if any part of the system drops the baton, the memory is just gone.
It dissolves. So let us stand at the starting line. The sources call this the acquisition phase.
Step 1. The experience.
The input. Let's create a scenario to really ground this for you. The research uses examples like driving or editing a video, but I want to use something very immediate.
Something sensory.
Yeah. Let's say you are sitting in a coffee shop. It is a Tuesday morning. You can smell that bitter, dark, roasted scent of espresso.
You can hear the hiss of the steam roller.
Right. And you see a friend walking through the door wearing a bright red coat.
In that exact moment, your brain is being bombarded. It's just a flood of input. Your eyes are taking in photons reflecting off that red fabric.
Your ears are vibrating with the acoustic waves of the steam.
Your olfactory bulbs are processing the literal chemical signature of the coffee beans in the air.
But right now, at this exact millisecond, this isn't a memory. This is just noise. It is just raw sensory data flooding into the biological system.
That is correct. This is what the researchers call the online experience. Your cortex, which is that wrinkly outer layer of the brain, it is lighting up in different areas.
The visual cortex for the coat?
The auditory cortex for the steam. But they are separate fragments. They're not bound together in any meaningful way yet.
So if you were to stop paying attention right now, if a car alarm went off outside and distracted you, that experience would just evaporate.
You'd be gone forever. It was never saved.
So to turn that noise into a record, to make it something that you can actually recall next week, it has to go through a bottleneck.
There is a specific anatomical structure in the brain that acts as the gatekeeper.
The hippocampus.
The hippocampus.
I really love this part of the anatomy. It is tucked deep, deep inside the medial temporal lobe.
Yes, and it is actually named after its shape. Hippocampus is Greek for seahorse.
Because it looks like one.
If you dissect a human brain, it looks exactly like 2 little seahorses curled up, one on each side of the brain.
And this structure is the buffer. I have heard it described as the brain's RAM, or like a temporary scratch pad.
The USB buffer is a very accurate way to think about it.
Yeah.
The hippocampus is responsible for taking all those disparate sensory inputs
The smell, the sound, the red coat.
and binding them together into a single cohesive episode. It creates a unified snapshot of the now.
This is where we get into the concept of the enneagram. I kept seeing this word over and over in the papers, enneagram.
It sounds a bit like science fiction.
It does, the enneagram, but it is a real physical thing.
It is the holy grail of modern neuroscience. An enneagram is the literal physical trace of a memory inside the brain tissue.
So when you see that red coat in the coffee shop, It is not that your entire brain lights up to remember it.
No, it is a very specific, very sparse population of neurons that fire together.
Maybe just a few thousand individual cells out of those billions?
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that specific group of cells firing in that highly specific pattern, that is the memory trace.
That ensemble of neurons acts as a biological container.
At the exact moment of the experience, those specific neurons undergo physiological changes. They're essentially selected to hold this precise piece of information.
We have to make a really important distinction here, one that all the sources hammer home repeatedly.
We are talking about a specific kind of memory right now.
Yes. Because knowing that coffee is generally made of roasted beans is a very different thing from remembering that specific cup of coffee you had on Tuesday morning.
It is a crucial distinction to make. What we're describing with the coffee shop, the friend coming in, the time, the place, that is episodic memory.
It is autobiographical.
It is the movie of your life.
As opposed to semantic memory.
Right. Semantic memory is just facts. The capital of Australia is Canberra.
A triangle has 3 sides.
You don't remember the exact moment you learned that a triangle has 3 sides. You don't remember the weather that day or the shirt you were wearing.
You just know the fact.
Episodic memory is remembering. Semantic memory is knowing.
And the hippocampus is the absolute boss of episodic memory.
It is the gatekeeper for it.
We know this, and I mean we know this for an absolute medical fact because of one specific man. You cannot read a single research paper on human memory without running into the story of Henry Molaison.
Or, as he was known in the literature for decades, Patient HM.
Patient HM. It is arguably the most famous case study in the entire history of medicine.
Without a doubt.
I want to spend some time observing Henry's story because it is a tragic story, but it is also the event that gave humanity the map to our own minds.
It really did. If we go back to 1953, Henry is a young man. He is 27 years old, and he is suffering from severe epilepsy.
And we should clarify, this isn't mild epilepsy. These are debilitating, violently uncontrollable seizures that are completely ruining his life.
He can't work. He can't socialize. He can't live a normal life at all.
So out of desperation, he goes to a neurosurgeon named Dr. William Scoville in Hartford, Connecticut. And at the time, the science of brain surgery was, well, let's call it exploratory.
That is a very polite way to put it. They knew from primitive EEGs that his seizures were originating in the medial temporal lobes. So Dr. Scoville proposed a highly radical solution.
He was going to resect to surgically remove that specific part of the brain.
On both sides of the skull.
So they go in and they actually remove the hippocampus. Both of the seahorses are taken out, along with some of the surrounding cortical tissue.
And from a purely surgical perspective, it was considered a success.
The seizures stopped.
They were drastically reduced. Henry survived the operation. But when he woke up and began to interact with the nurses and his family, it became immediately apparent that something profound was wrong.
The sources describe his condition as being permanently stuck in the present tense.
Yes, the permanent present. Henry could remember his childhood perfectly. He knew his own name. He knew who the President of the United States was before 1953.
So his past was intact.
Completely. And he had a semantic knowledge. He knew how to speak English fluidly. He knew what a car was, how to use a fork.
But he could not form a single new episodic memory.
None. His working memory was fine. That is the temporary scratch pad we use to hold a phone number in our head for 10 seconds.
Right, so if you walked into his hospital room and introduced yourself, he would smile.
He would shake your hand. He would have a completely normal, pleasant conversation with you about the weather.
But if you walked out of the room, waited just 2 minutes in the hallway, and walked back in,
You are a total stranger to him.
the total stranger.
The slate was wiped entirely clean. He lived the next 55 years of his natural life in roughly 30-second increments.
He never even knew he was aging.
No. He would look in the mirror and be deeply shocked by the gray-haired old man looking back at him. And then a minute later, he would forget the shock. He would forget he even looked in the mirror.
It is a terrifying reality to imagine. But scientifically, observing his brain proves something massive for neuroscience.
It proved that the hippocampus is the writer of memories, but it is not the storage drive.
Because he still had his old memories from childhood, we knew the hippocampus isn't where memories live permanently. If they lived there, his childhood would have been deleted by the surgery.
Exactly. But because he couldn't make any new memories, we knew the hippocampus is the only way to get them into the permanent storage.
He had completely lost the ability to press the save button.
The save button was removed.
Okay, so let's look closer at that save button. This moves us to the second phase in our scientific outline today. coding.
Step 2, encoding.
We have had the experience in the coffee shop. The hippocampus is lighting up with electrical activity. The specific enneagram of cells is selected. But what is physically happening in the tissue?
Right.
If I zoomed in with an electron microscope to one of those singular neurons in your hippocampus while you were looking at that red coat, what would I actually see?
You would see a flurry of chemical activity at the synapse.
This synapse being the gap.
Yes, the incredibly tiny gap between two neurons. Neurons don't actually physically touch each other. They have to shout their messages across this microscopic void.
And the biological rule that governs this shouting match is a principle called Heppian theory.
Named after Donald Hebb, who proposed it in 1949. And the phrase that every first-year neuroscience student learns is, neurons that fire together, wire together.
Neurons that fire together, wire together. It is very catchy. But let's observe what it actually means. What does it physically mean to wire together?
Think of it like a trail in a dense, overgrown forest. The very first time you walk from point A to point B, it is difficult.
You have to push through the heavy brush.
You are stepping over roots. The connection is weak and inefficient. If you walk that exact same path again the next day,
The brush gets trampled down a little bit more.
right, and if you walk it every single day for a month, it becomes a clear dirt path.
And then a paved road. And eventually a multi-lane highway.
In the physical brain, this is literal. If neuron A, representing the smell of the coffee, fires at the exact same time as neuron B, representing the site of the red coat, the brain recognizes a pattern.
The brain says these two things are happening simultaneously. They must be related.
And the brain physically reinforces the biological bridge between them.
The sources refer to this process as long-term potentiation, LTP.
LTP. And it's not magic, it is cellular construction. When those two neurons fire together repeatedly, you get an influx of calcium ions flowing into the receiving cell,
Calcium, like the exact same mineral that is in a glass of milk.
the very same element. But here it is acting as a critical signaling molecule. When that calcium rushes into the neuron, it is like a loud bell ringing inside a firehouse.
It wakes everybody up.
It wakes up a whole cascade of enzymes. And the most famous one in this process is a specific kinase called CAM-KI.
CAM-KII. The sources described it almost like the foreman of a construction crew.
That is a perfect observational analogy. The calcium rings the fire bell, CAM-KI wakes up, puts on its hard hat, and starts yelling orders to the cell.
What kind of orders?
It tells the cell nucleus to start synthesizing brand new proteins. It tells the cell to physically push more chemical receptors up to the surface of the synapse.
So that I can hear the shout from the other neuron more easily next time.
Exactly. It literally builds a wider, more sensitive receiver.
So when we use the phrase wire together, we mean the connection physically gets thicker, it gets faster. It is a structural change.
It becomes a physically more robust structure. And this is exactly why repetition is so fundamental to learning anything.
Every time you repeat an action, every time you practice a C major scale on the piano or review your study notes for a test,
You are sending that electrical signal down the exact same forest path again. You are ringing the calcium bell again.
you are bringing the construction crew back to the site for another shift.
And they lay down more asphalt. This biological reality explains why cramming for an exam usually fails in the long run.
You simply cannot build a multi-lane highway in a single night.
You can trample down a dirt path in one night of cramming, but a dirt path washes away in the rain. To build a concrete highway, you need time.
And you need the next critical step in the memory process.
Which brings us to step 3, consolidation.
The transformation phase. Now, this is the part of the research that I found profoundly fascinating. Because up until now, we have been observing things happening while you are awake.
You are in the coffee shop, your eyes are open, neurons are firing in real time.
But the neuroscience shows that the most critical part of saving a memory, of making it permanent, happens when you are completely unconscious.
It happens while you sleep.
We are seeing this theme emerge in almost every field of human biology lately. Sleep is the foundational hero. But in the context of memory, sleep is not just a passive resting state.
It is not turning the machine off. It is an incredibly active workload.
Can we go back to the hippocampus for a moment? The USB buffer, the seahorse.
Yes.
The seahorse has a hard capacity limit. It simply cannot hold every single experience of your life forever.
It is strictly temporary storage. If you do not move those files from the USB stick to the main hard drive, they will eventually just get overwritten by tomorrow's experiences.
And sleep is the file transfer protocol.
Sleep is when the transfer happens. The research outlines this intricate dialogue between the hippocampus and the cortex.
And this happens during a specific phase of sleep, slow wave sleep.
Deep, non-dreaming sleep. If we were to attach electrodes to your scalp and observe your brain waves during this phase, we would see these beautiful, long, slow electrical oscillations.
Just slow, rolling waves of energy.
But riding right on top of those slow waves are these sudden, extremely fast, sharp bursts of electrical energy. They're called sharp wave ripples.
Sharp wave ripples, what is the biological function of those ripples?
They are replay events. This is arguably the most elegant mechanism we will observe today. The exact neurons that fire during the day, once for the smell of the coffee and the sight of the red coat.
The anagram.
Yes, that anagram fires again during deep sleep, but it fires in extreme fast forward.
So my brain is literally rewatching the biological tape of my day, but on fast forward.
It is. The hippocampus is basically shouting the pattern up to the cortex. It's saying, here's the pattern from Tuesday morning, here's what happened, learn this.
And it does this over and over.
It repeats that specific pattern hundreds, maybe thousands of times in these compressed microbursts of electricity.
So while you were just lying there, completely unaware, drooling on your pillow, your hippocampus is acting as a relentless teacher, training your cortex on the events of the day.
Precisely. It is transferring the biological responsibility. The hippocampus is saying, my buffer is getting full, I cannot hold this coffee shop memory forever. You need to take it.
This is what the literature refers to as systems consolidation.
Yes, moving it from a local system to a distributed system.
But there is another mechanism happening during this slow wave sleep, a process the papers call downscaling.
Synaptic homeostasis.
Right, synaptic homeostasis.
Think about it from an energy perspective. If you spent your entire waking day strengthening connections, building highways everywhere, eventually your brain would literally run out of physical space inside the skull.
It would run out of metabolic energy to sustain all those connections.
It would just become a massive traffic jam of electricity. Everything would be too loud.
So what does the brain do?
During slow wave sleep, the brain performs a general dimming of the lights. It uniformly weakens all the synapses across the brain just a little bit.
It mathematically scales everything down.
Exactly. It lowers the baseline volume.
But if it turns down the volume on everything, how do the important memories survive the night?
Because the important memories are being replayed so aggressively during those sharp wave ripples, they get artificially boosted while everything else is dim.
So they survive the cut.
Yes. The weak, trivial data from the day, like the random license plate of a car you saw in traffic, or the color of a napkin you wiped your mouth with.
Stuff you didn't focus on.
That weak data gets pruned away by the downscaling. It fades into the background, the core signal remains, and the useless noise is cleanly removed.
That is just incredibly efficient.
Biological evolution is nothing if not ruthlessly efficient.
But slow wave sleep is only one part of the nightly cycle. We also have REM sleep, rapid eye movement, the phase where we dream.
And the neurochemistry during REM sleep shifts completely. The brain is suddenly bathed in a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine.
If you look at an EEG during REM, the brain waves look almost identical to when a person is wide awake.
It is highly active. If slow wave sleep is about physically saving the file to the hard drive, REM sleep is about understanding what the file actually means.
It's connecting the semantic dots.
Integration. This is the phase where the brain takes that newly saved memory of the coffee shop and asks, how does this new data fit with everything else I have learned in my life?
It is running cross-references.
It connects the new experience to your existing conceptual networks, your schemas.
So this might be where we experience those sudden aha moments of clarity after sleeping on a problem.
Often, yes. The brain is testing abstract connections during REM, trying to fit the new puzzle piece into the massive lifelong picture.
The sources also note REM is critical for processing emotional memory.
It is vital. During REM, the brain actively works to strip the raw, visceral emotional charge away from the factual memory.
So you can remember a stressful event without having a literal panic attack every single time you recall it. It separates the fact from the feeling.
It soothes the emotional edge.
Which means if you decide to pull an all-nighter to study or work, you are not just making yourself tired.
No, you are physically preventing your own biology from moving memories out of the temporary buffer.
You are sabotaging the file transfer, and because the buffer is limited, those memories will simply get overwritten the next day. They will dissolve.
They're gone.
Okay, let us assume for our scenario that you got a full, healthy night of sleep. The hippocampus has done its job. It has shouted the enneagram up to the cortex. We now move to step 4, long-term storage.
Library.
The memory has officially left the temporary USB stick and is now resting on the massive hard drive, the cerebral cortex.
The neocortex.
And this is exactly where the old filing cabinet metaphor fails the hardest.
It falls apart completely here, because there is no single, dedicated spot in the cortex where the file for Tuesday coffee shop memory lives.
There's no folder with a label on it.
No. The memory is shattered. It is radically distributed across the entire surface of the brain.
The sensory fragments are sent to different departments.
The visual part of the memory, the bright red coat, that is routed to the visual cortex in the occipital lobe at the very back of your head.
And the auditory part, the loud, hissing steam wand.
That is stored separately in the temporal lobe on the side of your head. And the spatial layout of where you were sitting relative to the door, that goes to the parietal lobe near the top.
It is like taking a highly detailed book, ripping out all the individual pages, and hiding them in completely different rooms of a massive library.
That is precisely what it is like. But, and this is the crucial biological reality, those scattered pages are secretly connected by an invisible web.
The enneagram.
The unified enneagram. In the cortex, the enneagram is the specific sprawling web of synaptic connections that links all those distributed fragments back together.
So when you recall the coffee shop memory a year later, you aren't just pulling up a static JPEG image.
You are reactivating the entire web. You are forcing the brain to pull the visual fragment, the auditory fragment, and spatial fragment back together simultaneously to reconstruct the scene in real time.
It is a live performance.
A reconstruction, not a playback.
And once that memory is fully established and wired into the cortex, do we still rely on the hippocampus to access it?
For that specific older memory, no. Eventually, the connections between the cortical regions become thick enough and strong enough to sustain themselves.
The highway is paved.
Yes. And the scaffolding of the hippocampus simply falls away. It is no longer needed for that specific trace.
Which perfectly explains the tragedy of patient HM.
It does. HM lost his hippocampus in 1953, so he fundamentally lacked the biological scaffolding to build new memories.
But his childhood memories, his memories of his parents, his old house,
those had already spent years consolidating. They were already widely distributed and secured in the cortex. They were completely independent of the hippocampus, so they survived the surgery intact.
As we observe this process, there is a distinct shift in the quality of the memory over time, isn't there? The literature notes that as memories settle into the cortex, they become semanticized.
They lose their sharp edges over time. Think about an abstract fact. The capital of France is Paris?
Right, Paris.
Do you remember the specific singular moment you first learned that fact?
No, not a clue.
But you almost certainly did experience it as an episodic event once. You were sitting in a specific classroom, maybe it was raining outside the window, maybe you're wearing a blue shirt.
So at the very beginning, it was an episodic memory.
It was an episode. But over the years, as that data was repeatedly consolidated into the cortex, the contextual details were systematically stripped away.
The rain, the blue shirt, the room, it all withered away.
The time and place faded, and only the pure, crystallized fact remained.
The narrative turned into pure data.
That is the ultimate fate of most of our long-term memories. They slowly transition from personal stories into generalized knowledge.
Now, before we move away from the cortex, I want to observe one very new piece of research. This idea of the silent enneagram.
From the Tonegawa lab.
Yes, the Tonegawa lab at MIT. When I read this, it felt like a sudden plot twist in the biological story we're telling.
It is a major disruption to the standard systems consolidation model we just outlined.
Because the standard model is linear. Step 1, hippocampus gathers it. Step 2, sleep transfers it to the cortex.
Right, a linear transfer over time.
But the Tonegawa research suggests that timeline is not quite right.
His research team utilized extremely advanced optogenetics. They were literally using lasers to turn specific memory cells on and off in the brains of mice.
Which is incredible on its own.
It is. And what they observed was that the cortex actually creates its own physical memory trace immediately. At the exact same moment, the hippocampus creates the initial buffer copy.
So a secondary backup is created instantly in the hard drive.
It is created instantly, yes, but it is entirely silent. It is biologically immature.
Meaning the structure is there, but it is inactive.
The neurons are physically present, the loose connections are drafted, but you cannot consciously retrieve it. It is locked down.
It is like downloading a large software file, but it is heavily password protected and encrypted.
That is exactly it. And the emerging theory is that the hippocampus is still strictly required to slowly train that silent cortical memory over the following weeks and months.
The hippocampus slowly provides the decryption key.
And eventually, through slow-wave sleep and repetition, the cortical memory matures. It becomes active, and the hippocampal key is discarded.
It just highlights how much we are still discovering about the wetware. The brain is profoundly redundant. It writes a ghost copy immediately, just in case.
It is an evolutionary fail-safe mechanism.
Okay, so up to this point, we have been stringly observing what the sources call declarative memory.
The memories we can consciously declare. Facts, stories, events.
But our scientific outline has a whole separate section dedicated to the autopilot. The things we do physically without actively thinking about them at all.
Procedural memory.
This relies on a completely different biological system, doesn't it? Even patient HM, who could not remember a single new fact, could actually learn new physical skills.
Yes, he could learn skills without ever knowing he was learning them.
That feels like a paradox.
It was a massive breakthrough.
Yeah.
Brenda Milner was the pioneering researcher who worked closely with him. And she had him perform a very specific clinical test called a star tracing task.
What does that involve?
He had to trace the outline of a star on a piece of paper, but he could only see his hand and the paper by looking through a mirror.
That is surprisingly difficult. Your hand wants to move the opposite way your brain expects it to.
It is very frustrating for anyone who tries it. And the first time Henry tried it, he was terrible at it. He kept crossing the lines.
Just like any normal person.
Exactly. But Dr. Milner had him practice this mirror tracing task day after day.
And because he had no hippocampus, every single day he walked into the testing room, he had zero conscious memory of ever seeing the puzzle before.
He would look at it and say, I have never seen this strange drawing in my life.
But his physical hands already knew the answer.
By the third day of practice, he performed the tracing task flawlessly. He drew inside the lines with perfect fluid speed.
Having absolutely no memory of practicing.
He looked down at his own hand moving perfectly and said, I thought that would be a lot harder.
It gives you a strange feeling just observing that. I thought that would be harder. His conscious narrative mind was completely blank, but his unconscious biological machinery had diligently kept the score.
Because procedural memory, the memory of physical actions, does not rely on the hippocampus at all. It relies on a deep, primitive structure called the basal ganglia.
The basal ganglia, this is located deep down near the brainstem, right?
It is ancient neuroanatomy. It comprises the striatum, the putamen, and the caudate nucleus.
And these structures specifically handle automated habits and motor routines.
They are the autopilot. The sources break this down into a very specific behavioral loop. The habit.
Cue, routine, reward.
This is the fundamental algorithm running inside the basal ganglia. First you have the cue, a trigger from the environment.
So you walk into your kitchen at night and it is totally dark. That darkness is the cue.
The routine is your arm reaching out and flipping the light switch on the wall. You do not stand there and consciously formulate a plan. You don't think, I must extend my shoulder joint and manipulate the plastic lever.
You just execute the movement instantly.
The basal ganglia runs the pre-programmed macro.
And the third part is the reward.
The light turns on, you can see success, and the specific chemical currency that signals that success in the brain is dopamine.
Dopamine. We hear that word constantly in pop culture as the pleasure molecule, the thing that makes scrolling on phones addictive. But in this fundamental biological context, it is acting as a learning signal.
It is a critical teaching chemical. It signals what computational neuroscientists call a prediction error, or a value update.
If an action leads to a successful outcome, the basal ganglia releases a burst of dopamine.
And that localized burst of dopamine physically strengthens the synaptic connections in that exact motor circuit. It is the brain's way of stamping a chemical signature that says, that movement worked perfectly, keep that wiring for next time.
This mechanism explains exactly how we learn complex skills like driving a car.
Yes.
I remember when I first learned to drive, I was hyper aware of every single micro movement. Check the rear view mirror, check the side mirror, place hands at 10 and 2, gently ease pressure off the brake pedal.
It requires immense cognitive effort.
It was completely exhausting to drive for 20 minutes.
That exhaustion was your prefrontal cortex, the conscious, rational part of your brain, trying to micromanage every single physical variable. The prefrontal cortex consumes a massive amount of metabolic energy.
It burns glucose fast.
But as you repeated those driving motions over weeks and months, the dopamine burst slowly reinforced the circuit.
The basal ganglia took over the workload.
It chunked those dozens of isolated actions into one single
years later, I can drive 30 miles home from work and pull into my driveway without consciously remembering a single moment of the actual trip.
You are operating on pure autopilot.
Some people call it being a zombie behind the wheel, but structurally it is just peak efficiency.
You are freeing up the prefrontal cortex, while the basal ganglia flawlessly executes the complex motor skill of driving. Your conscious mind is entirely free to think about what to cook for dinner or to listen to this deep dive.
We commonly refer to this phenomenon as muscle memory. You hear musicians talk about it constantly. A guitar player will say, "I don't know the chords there, just in my fingers."
It is a very poetic phrase, muscle memory. But strictly speaking, it is a complete biological lie.
Muscles do not have memory.
Muscles are just biological pulleys. They are dumb meat responding to electrical cables. The memory itself is stored securely in the brain, specifically in the motor cortex and the cerebellum.
The cerebellum, that is the dense, tightly packed structure sitting right at the base of the skull.
They look a bit like a tiny cauliflower.
And it handles the extreme fine-tuning of movement.
The cerebellum calculates precise timing, rhythm, and spatial coordination. When a concert pianist plays a blisteringly fast arpeggio, there is literally zero biological time for conscious thought to intervene.
The conscious brain processes information too slowly.
The electrical signal travels from the cerebellum down the spinal cord and into the fingers much faster than the prefrontal cortex can even observe it happening.
So we basically have these two massive, distinct memory systems running completely in parallel inside us at all times.
Yes.
We have the hippocampus and cortex system handling our autobiographical story, and we have the basal ganglia and cerebellum system quietly managing our physical survival and actions.
And 99% of the time, they operate together seamlessly without you ever noticing.
Which brings us to the final piece of the biological puzzle we need to observe today. And honestly, looking through the sources, this might be the most comforting mechanism of all.
We need to talk about the necessity of forgetting.
Forgetting. Because in daily life, we almost universally view forgetting as a failure. We treat it as a bug in the software.
We say things like, my brain is getting full, or I am losing my edge. We pathologize it.
But the neurobiological research states quite clearly that forgetting is not a failure. It is a highly engineered feature.
It is biologically mandatory. If you literally remembered every single piece of sensory data you ever experienced, your brain would be completely unable to function in the world.
There's a very famous clinical case that perfectly illustrates this, isn't there? A Russian journalist named Solomon Cheryshev.
A fascinating case study from the early 20th century. Cheryshev possessed a condition called synesthesia, where his senses overlapped, and he essentially had a limitless, boundless episodic memory.
He never forgot anything.
He could be given a random string of 70 numbers, and he could effortlessly repeat it back in reverse order, flawlessly, 15 years later.
To most people, that sounds like an absolute superpower.
It sounds like magic. But for him, it was a debilitating curse, because he could not prioritize information.
He couldn't filter the signal from the noise.
Everything was a signal. He struggled deeply to understand simple metaphors or poetry because his mind would get trapped in the hyperliteral details in every single word.
And the sources note he even had trouble recognizing faces over time.
Because a human face changes slightly every day. You look tired, but the lighting is different. His brain would remember the exact immutable image of your face from the Tuesday 10 years ago.
So he couldn't extract the general concept of you.
He literally could not see the forest because he was paralyzed by his perfect memory of the bark on every individual tree. Forgetting is the mechanism that allows us to generalize and clears out the clutter so we can extract abstract rules about how the world works.
The outline mentions a specific term for this clearing process: pruning. Is this the exact opposite of the fire and wire concept we observed earlier?
It is the exact molecular opposite. Just as the brain utilizes long-term potentiation, or LTP, to build connections, it also utilizes long-term depression, LTD.
Long-term depression. It is a slightly confusing term for a layperson.
It refers strictly to the electrical depression of the synaptic signal. If a specific neural pathway is not used for a long time, if neuron A stops shouting across the gap to neuron B,
Because the information is no longer relevant.
right, the brain actively senses that silence, and it begins to systematically dismantle the physical synapse.
It pulls up the paved road.
It reclaims the structural proteins, it recycles the biological materials to use somewhere else.
It really is a literal case of use it or lose it.
Pure biological economics. And it goes even deeper than simple neglect. There are mechanisms of active forgetting.
Active forgetting. meaning the brain goes out of its way to erase things on purpose.
The brain deploys specific molecular pathways involving proteins like RAC1 that wander through the neural networks, actively scrubbing and degrading weak memory traces.
It is like a biological janitorial staff coming in at night to sweep the floors.
That is a very apt observation. They clean up the unused files. And then there's the phenomenon of neurogenesis causing forgetting. This is particularly fascinating.
Neurogenesis, the birth of brand new brain cells. We grow new neurons in the hippocampus, right? Specifically in a region called the dentate gyrus.
Yes, we continue generating fresh neurons there, even into adulthood.
But logically, growing new brain cells sounds like it should only be a positive thing for memory, more capacity.
It is highly positive for learning entirely new concepts. But think about the physical wiring we just discussed.
The precise engrams.
If you suddenly introduce thousands of fresh, unconnected neurons into a tightly established existing electrical circuit,
You create massive electrical noise.
you disrupt the delicate balance. The new growth physically overwrites and destabilizes the old connections.
You are accidentally recording over the old tape just by growing.
This is currently the leading scientific theory for a universal phenomenon known as infantile amnesia.
Infantile amnesia, the reason why none of us can remember being a 2-year-old.
When you ask someone why they don't remember being a baby, they usually just say, well, because I was a baby, my brain wasn't ready.
But the truth is much more dynamic.
As a toddler, your rate of neurogenesis was absolutely explosive. Your hippocampus was churning out massive numbers of new neurons every single day.
Because you had to learn everything about the physical world at a staggering pace.
You were learning to balance, to walk, to process language, to eat solid food.
But the unavoidable biological cost of all that rapid learning, all that rapid physical growth, was that the delicate autobiographical record of your daily life was being completely shredded by the new wiring. We literally forget our early childhood because we are growing too fast to save it. That is a profound observation.
The biological system always prioritizes immediate survival and adaptation over maintaining a perfect historical archive.
Okay, we have observed machinery in extreme detail today. Let us slowly zoom out. I want to briefly recap the physical journey of a memory for anyone who has been carefully tracking this process with us.
It is a continuous, looping biological cycle.
Step 1 was the experience.
Raw sensory data ignites the visual and auditory cortex. The hippocampus binds those chaotic fragments together and captures a unified snapshot in the temporary USB buffer.
Step 2 was encoding.
Hebbian theory takes over the tissue. Neurons that fire together wire together. Calcium ions rush into the cells. Enzymes like CAM-KI wake up, and they physically construct stronger, wider bridges at the synapse.
Step 3 was consolidation.
You fall asleep. During deep, slow-wave sleep, the hippocampus repeatedly replays the day's neural patterns in high-speed, sharp-wave ripples. The cortex observes the pattern and learns it. The file is slowly transferred.
And step 4 was storage.
The memory is now systematically distributed across the neocortex in a vast web of connections. Over the years, it becomes highly stable, stripped of context, and forms the permanent semantic library of your reality.
And running entirely underneath all of that conscious architecture, the basal ganglia and the cerebellum are quietly building your automatic habits.
While the molecular janitors constantly sweep away the decayed connections so you can maintain your sanity.
It is a relentless, elegant, and entirely invisible system operating inside us every second of our lives.
It is an incredibly beautiful machine.
I want to leave the listener with one final, slightly provocative thought drawn from the very edge of this research. It is about what actually happens biologically when we decide to use one of these stored memories.
Reconsolidation.
Reconsolidation.
The sting in the tail of memory science.
It completely reframes how we view our own past.
Because intuitively, we believe that remembering an event is like safely pulling an old photograph out of a protective box.
You look at the photo, you appreciate the details, and then you safely slide it back into the box, unchanged.
But the underlying cellular biology proves that intuition completely wrong.
When you consciously activate a memory trace, when you reactivate that specific engram of the coffee shop in your cortex, the physical synapse briefly becomes structurally unstable again.
It unlocks, it becomes biologically labile.
It returns to a plastic state.
You have essentially opened a temporary edit window in the software. You have. And while that synaptic window remains open, the brain can automatically integrate new, real-time information into the old trace.
You can mix the present with the past.
If you happen to be feeling deeply sad or anxious today, while you remember that pleasant Tuesday in the coffee shop, your brain might accidentally save some of that current sadness directly into the original file.
So when the edit window closes, when the brain reconsolidates the file back into storage,
It is physically altered. The biological structure of the memory is slightly different than it was before you opened it.
so a memory is never a static playback. Every single time we remember something, we are reconstructing it. It is a story the cortex is telling us right now.
And we are subconsciously editing the draft of that story every single time we choose to tell it.
Which means, logically, the specific memories that you cherish the most in your life, the ones you replay in your mind over and over again.
Those might actually be the least objectively accurate memories you possess, simply because you have opened the edit window the most times.
That is deeply fascinating. It is slightly unsettling to realize, but also wonderfully freeing. It means we are not just victims of our past data. We are constantly physically remaking ourselves.
We are the sum of our reconstructed memories, and those memories are a living, breathing part of our biology right now.
Just something quiet to observe tonight while your hippocampus is busy transferring files up to your cortex. This has been our deep dive into the absolute machinery of memory. Thank you for taking the time to observe this with us.
Sleep well. Welcome back to the deep dive. And I have to say, looking at the stack of research we have on the table today, the vibe just feels entirely different from our usual topics.
Yeah, it really does.
Usually we're looking at something with a very specific, actionable goal. How to negotiate better, how to understand a specific historical event, or how to use a new piece of tech. But this material, this feels less like a how-to guide and more like we're taking a flashlight and just walking down into a dark basement.
That is a very evocative way to put it. And honestly, it's appropriate. We're looking at the basement of the human experience here. We're looking at the machinery.
Machinery of us.
Yeah.
Exactly. We have papers here on synaptic plasticity, the neurobiology of sleep, dopamine reward circuit, the science of active forgetting. I mean, it is incredibly dense stuff.
It is.
But the thread connecting them all seems to be this concept of biological automation. It really feels like we're moving away from the whole idea of self-help, which always sort of implies you just need to try harder. And we're moving toward a pure inspection of the hardware.
Inspection is the key word I want us to hold on to for this entire deep dive. Because normally we live inside the experience. You feel motivated, or you feel tired, or you find yourself using a cookie you didn't really even want.
Right, and you judge those things.
You judge them. We all do. You say to yourself, I'm disciplined, or I'm lazy, or I have zero willpower. We attach heavy moral value to these basic biological functions.
We take it personally.
We take it completely personally. But the mission of this deep dive, and the reason I pulled these specific neurobiology papers, is to strip away that judgment entirely. We want to pop the hood. We want to look at the engine block. Because when you sit down and actually look at how a habit forms physically, or how sleep literally reconstructs memory, you realize that what we call personality or willpower is often just the output of a very specific biological script.
A script running on hardware that we almost never think about. And I think that's the perfect lens for you, the listener, today. I want you to imagine you are stepping back from your own brain. You aren't the driver right now. You're the mechanic standing next to the car, just observing and listening to the hum of the engine.
Just observing. And specifically observing the three systems we're going to cover today. First, the architecture of automation, how the brain physically wires a habit. Second, the chemical driver, how dopamine predicts the future to create motivation. And third, the update mechanism, how sleep physically rebuilds the brain every single night.
And just a quick heads up, we are going to get into the weeds today. We are going to talk about specific brain regions and protein complexes.
We are.
But we're doing it because that aha moment doesn't come from the broad general idea. It comes from the mechanism. It comes from realizing, oh, the reason I can't break this habit is because of a literal physical sheath of myelin wrapped around a specific wire in my basal ganglia.
And that is exactly where the liberation is. Understanding the mechanism shifts you from this exhausting place of fighting yourself to simply navigating your biology.
So let's open the hood. Let's start with part one, the architecture of automation. I think the most common misconception about habits is that they are just decisions we make quickly. Like, I decide to brush my teeth, and I just do it fast. But the literature suggests it's much more fundamental than that. It's an actual shift in neural real estate.
It is a literal migration of neural activity. To really understand this, we have to look at the brain not as one unified thing, but as a collection of competing systems. When you are doing something brand new, let's use the example of learning to drive a car, because almost everyone knows that visceral feeling. You are operating primarily in the prefrontal cortex, or PFC.
The famous prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, right behind the forehead.
Yes, the executive center. And importantly for our discussion, the goal-directed center. When you first get behind the wheel, your PFC is lighting up like a Christmas tree. It is actively monitoring the angle of the wheel, the pressure your foot is putting on the gas, the mirrors, the road signs. It is creating what neuroscientists call an associative loop.
Associative because it's actively associating your actions with their outcomes.
Precisely. The PFC is talking to a specific part of the striatum called the dorsomedial striatum, or the DMS. It's a loop that is constantly asking a series of questions. If I do X, does Y happen? If I press the brake, does the car actually stop? If I turn the wheel this much, do I hit the curb? It is highly, highly sensitive to the outcome.
I mean, it's exhausting. I remember teaching my teenager to drive. After 20 minutes in the empty parking lot, he was physically wiped out.
That is the metabolic cost of the prefrontal cortex. It is a massive energy hog. It burns glucose at an incredibly high rate. And the brain, evolutionarily speaking, is a miser. It absolutely hates wasting energy. Its primary directive is efficiency. So the moment it notices you are repeating a pattern, okay, he's turning the key, he's backing out, he's shifting into drive, it wants to offload that work. It desperately wants to get it off the expensive desk of the PFC.
It wants to automate.
It wants to move the task to the assembly line. And this is where the migration happens. As you repeat the behavior, the neural activity literally, physically shifts away from that associative loop in the DMS, and it moves over to the sensorimotor loop.
And this sensorimotor loop is a different part of the brain entirely.
It's a neighboring region, but it's a very distinct circuit. It connects the sensorimotor cortex to the dorsolateral striatum, the DLS. Think of the associative part, the DMS, as a rocky dirt path. You have to watch your footing. You have to pay close attention to every step. But the DLS, the sensorimotor part, is a paved, multi-lane superhighway. It is designed purely for speed and flow. It is not designed for decision-making.
So when the behavior completely moves to the DLS, what happens to the PFC? Does it just sit there and watch?
It goes offline. For that specific task, the PFC entirely disengages. This is exactly why you can drive your normal route to work, pull into the parking lot, and suddenly realize you have absolutely no conscious memory of the trip.
Which is a very common experience.
Exactly. You were thinking about what to make for dinner, or you were having an imaginary argument with a colleague. Your PFC was doing that. Meanwhile, the DLS was driving a 2-ton machine at 60 miles per hour, signaling, braking, turning, completely on autopilot.
That is honestly somewhat terrifying when you really think about it. The conscious that I identify with wasn't driving, the machine was driving.
The machine was driving, and it manages to do this through a process called chunking. This is a fascinating mechanism the basal ganglia uses to package information efficiently. Take that driving example. Backing out of your driveway is actually 50 tiny, distinct steps. You check the mirror, you put your foot on the brake, hand on the gear shift, move it to reverse, look over your shoulder, ease your foot off, turn the wheel.
To the PFC, those are 50 individual decisions.
Exactly. But to the DLS, that entire sequence is one single chunk.
It's like a macro on a computer keyboard or a zip file.
That's a great analogy. The brain groups the entire sequence into a single unit of behavior, places brackets around it. There's a specific burst of neural activity at the very beginning of the action, the start bracket, and another burst at the very end, the stop bracket. And during the middle of the action, the neural activity actually quiets down significantly.
Wait, so the brain fires the start command and then essentially goes to sleep until the car is out in the street?
In a manner of speaking, yes. It stops actively processing the individual middle steps. It trusts the compiled script. This is why if something unexpected interrupts you in the middle of a chunk, like a kid suddenly runs behind the car, it takes a split second to react. You literally have to wake up the PFC and break the chunk to take conscious control again.
And this physical shift to the DLS really explains why habits are so incredibly hard to break. It's not just in your head in some vague psychological sense, it's in your wires. The sources talk extensively about myelination as the sort of cement here.
Right. We've all heard the phrase, neurons that fire together wire together. But the wiring isn't just a simple connection, it's an active insulation job. When a pathway in the sensorimotor loop is used repeatedly, specialized glial cells come in and literally wrap the axons in a fatty substance called myelin.
I always picture this like wrapping electrical tape around a bare copper wire.
That's a helpful visualization, but you have to imagine the electrical tape also turns the wire into a superconductor. Myelin does two critical things. First, it prevents the electrical signal from leaking out, so the signal remains incredibly distinct and focused. Second, and most importantly, it increases the transmission speed by up to 100 times.
100 times faster.
Up to, yes.
Yeah.
So imagine you have this habit loop. Let's say reaching for your phone the second you feel a twinge of boredom. That specific circuit is heavily myelinated. It is a wide, paved, super fast highway. The alternative behavior, saying to yourself, I should just sit here with my thoughts, is a tiny, unpaved, high-resistance dirt path in the PFC. The electricity naturally wants to go down the myelinated path. It is the path of least resistance in a literal physical sense.
So when we try to use raw willpower to stop a bad habit, we are essentially trying to stand in the middle of a highway and stop a speeding truck with our bare hands.
Yeah.
We are fighting against the physics of our own nervous system.
You're fighting against biological efficiency. And as we established, the brain hates inefficiency. That's why when you get stressed or tired, you immediately default to your habits. Stress consumes a massive amount of energy. The brain senses a low energy state and instantly switches control over to the DLS because the DLS is cheap to run. It uses very little glucose compared to the PFC.
So when you're stressed, you don't actually lose your willpower. You simply fall back on your most efficient, heavily myelinated settings.
Precisely. You fall back to the basement.
This distinction between the conscious PFC and the automated DLS really clarifies the difference between the types of memory the sources discuss. They draw a very hard line between declarative memory and procedural memory.
Yes, and this is crucial for the observer perspective we're trying to cultivate today. Declarative memory is knowing that. I know that the capital of France is Paris. I know that I had eggs for breakfast today. You can consciously call that up and inspect it. Procedural memory is knowing how. It is the exclusive domain of the basal ganglia.
Think about touch typing. If you're a good typist, your fingers just fly across the keys. But if I stopped you and asked, without moving your hands, tell me exactly which finger hits the C key, you might actually stumble.
I'd have to air type it to figure it out.
Exactly. You have to run the physical program to access the information. That is the absolute hallmark of procedural memory. It is opaque to your conscious mind. You cannot inspect the code of a habit just by thinking about it. You can only observe the physical output. The habit exists in a part of the brain that simply doesn't have a voice. It only has movement.
And that silent, efficient, heavily myelinated machine in the basement, the DLS runs all these chunks of behavior, but a machine still needs fuel. It needs a reason to turn on in the first place.
Which brings us perfectly to the second pillar of this deep dive, the chemical driver. We have to talk about dopamine. And the papers you pulled are very aggressive about correcting the pop culture definition of dopamine.
We really have to dismantle the pleasure myth. If you ask most people on the street, they will say dopamine is the pleasure molecule. You eat a piece of chocolate, you get a hit of dopamine, you feel joy. But the neurobiology is crystal clear on this. Dopamine is not about liking the reward. It is about wanting the reward. It is a system built entirely for seeking. And technically, this is the mathematical part of the biology. It is about reward prediction error.
Reward prediction error. This specific phrase comes up dozens of times in these papers. I really want to break this down, because this seems to be the underlying algorithm that runs all of our motivation.
It is the fundamental algorithm of learning in the brain. The brain is, at its core, a prediction machine. It is constantly generating a background model of what is about to happen next. Dopamine is the metric it uses to check if that model is actually right. Imagine 3 scenarios to illustrate this. Scenario A. You walk up to a vending machine, you put in $1, you expect a soda, you press the button, you get a soda.
The expectation is perfectly met.
Exactly. And interestingly, in this scenario, there is no massive dopamine spike. There is a steady baseline firing, just enough to say keep going, but no surge. The prediction was totally accurate. The brain is effectively bored by accuracy.
Okay, scenario B.
Scenario B. You put in $1, press the button, and suddenly 2 sodas fall out, plus a candy bar.
Jackpot.
That is a positive prediction error. The outcome was significantly better than expected. Boom, massive dopamine spike. This spike sends a powerful chemical signal backward to the striatum that says, whatever you just did to make this happen, do it again. Remember the context, remember the physical movement. This was highly valuable. This is the exact moment a habit is born.
And scenario C.
Scenario C, you put in $1, you press the button, and nothing happens. The machine just eats your money. This is a negative prediction error. Dopamine firing actively drops below baseline. It creates a visceral feeling of disappointment, of frustration, and a craving for the missing thing. And the chemical signal to the brain is, update the model. This action didn't work. Do not do this again.
So dopamine isn't a reward at all. It's basically a teaching signal. It's constantly grading our actions against our expectations.
It is a teaching signal. But here is the deep dive insight that will fundamentally change how you view your own behavior. It's what happens to that dopamine spike over time. It's a phenomenon called the migration of the spike.
The migration, this is the timeline shift that papers talk about.
Yes. When you are first learning a new habit, the dopamine spike happens when you get the reward. You eat the cookie, you get the spike. But as the habit forms, as that neural activity moves into the DLS sensoromotor loop, the dopamine spike actually moves backward in time. It detaches from the reward entirely, and it attaches itself to the cue.
So eventually, I don't get the dopamine hit when I eat the cookie. I get the dopamine hit when I see the cookie.
Or when you just walk into the kitchen. Or when you see the green logo of your favorite coffee shop. That spike happens before the action even begins. And we need to be clear, that spike is not joy. That spike is arousal. It is drive. It is a strict chemical command that says, action required. It creates a physical tension in the body that can only be resolved by completing the chunked behavior.
This completely explains why the anticipation of a vacation is often so much better than the actual vacation, or why the craving for a cigarette is so intense, but the actual act of smoking it is just sort of,
Exactly. The brain has optimized entirely for the pursuit. Once the habit is fully locked in, the reward itself becomes secondary. The dopamine is already fired. Its only job was to get you to start the engine. Once the engine is running and the DLS takes over, dopamine's job is done.
This leads us directly to what I thought was the most disturbing experiment in the entire stack of research, the devaluation test. I want you to walk us through this because this is where the zombie nature of habits really shows itself clearly.
This is the absolute gold standard test in neuroscience for distinguishing a conscious goal from an automated habit. It's usually done with rats. So, stage 1. You train a rat to press a small lever to get a sugar pellet. The rat loves it. It learns the rule. Press lever, get sugar. It does this thousands of times. The loop becomes heavily myelinated. The dopamine spike is migrated to the mere sight of the lever.
The habit is officially formed.
The habit is formed. Now, stage 2. You take the rat out of that specific cage, and you devalue the reward. You give the rat unlimited sugar pellets in a different environment. You let it eat until it is completely sick, or in some variations of the experiment, researchers inject a substance that creates mild nausea whenever the rat eats the sugar. Basically, you make the rat biologically hate the sugar. It looks at the sugar and literally turns away in disgust.
So the goal, the sugar, is now a negative outcome. It's not a reward anymore.
Right. The goal is entirely gone. Now we move to stage 3. You put the rat back in the original box with the lever. If the behavior was still controlled by the prefrontal cortex, if it were goal-directed, the rat would look at the lever and think, lever means sugar. I hate sugar right now, I will not press the lever. And it would just sit there.
That would be the rational response.
That's rational, but that is not what happens with a habit. The rat looks at the lever, the visual cue triggers the DLS, the sensoromotor loop fires automatically. The rat walks over and presses the lever, the sugar pellet falls out. The rat looks at the pellet, refuses to eat it, clearly looks disgusted by it, and then turns around and presses the lever again.
It keeps pressing the lever even though it actively doesn't want the result.
It presses the lever because the physical action is no longer linked to the result. It is linked exclusively to the cue. In neuroscience, this is called insensitivity to outcome. The machinery is running simply because the start button was pushed. The rat has effectively become a spectator to its own behavior.
I feel like we have all been that rat at some point, scrolling social media endlessly when we are exhausted even though we know it makes us feel actively worse. Or absent-mindedly eating the popcorn at the movie theater even though it's stale and we aren't even hungry.
That is the devaluation test playing out in real human life. When you find yourself doing something and thinking to yourself, why am I doing this? I don't even enjoy this anymore. You are witnessing your dorsolateral striatum executing a myelinated script that has become decoupled from the original reward. You are just watching the machine run on its own momentum.
That's heavy. It really challenges the whole philosophical idea of, I chose to do this, did I really choose it, or did the lever just appear in my field of vision?
It strongly suggests that a huge percentage of our day, and some researchers put this at 40 to 50% of our waking hours, is just lever pressing. We are navigating the complex world via pre-recorded scripts just to save glucose.
So we have this incredibly powerful system that automates our behavior, the habits. And we have a system that drives us to act, the dopamine. But biological systems aren't static. They require intense maintenance. They have to process all this data we collect during the day. And that brings us to the third pillar of this deep dive, update mechanism. We need to talk about sleep.
Sleep. We so often think of sleep as just the off switch. The computer shuts down, the screen goes black. But biologically speaking, that couldn't be more wrong. Sleep is not off. Sleep is when the IT department comes in. It's when the heavy construction crew shows up for the night shift.
The sources describe a two-stage memory system, and this seems to be the core physical problem the brain is trying to solve while we sleep.
It's fundamentally an issue of storage media. We have two main physical locations where we store information. First, we have the hippocampus. You can think of this as a USB flash drive or your computer's short-term RAM. It is incredibly fast. It can capture a memory in a single one-shot exposure. I parked on level 4. That new guy's name is Steve.
But like a USB stick, it has limited capacity.
Limited capacity, and it is highly fragile. New sensory information can easily overwrite the old information.
And the second storage location.
The neocortex, the wrinkly outer layer of the brain that we typically picture. This is the massive server farm, the permanent hard drive. It has virtually unlimited capacity, and it is very, very stable. But it is incredibly slow to accept new data. It cannot write directly to the neocortex quickly. It prefers to connect information loosely over time. To get something permanently into the neocortex, you really need to hammer it in over and over again.
So the dilemma the brain faces is, we learn fast during the day using the fragile hippocampus, but we need to store that data long-term in the slow neocortex.
Enter sleep. Specifically, slow-wave sleep and the transition periods into REM sleep. This is where a process called system consolidation happens. It's essentially an automated file transfer protocol. And while you are asleep, the hippocampus actually replays the memories and neural patterns of the day, but it doesn't just replay them in real time, it blasts them at incredibly high speed. It's a phenomenon called temporal compression.
Like watching a movie on 10 times fast forward.
Exactly. The specific neurons that fired when you were practicing that new driving skill fire in the exact same sequence, but super fast. This high-speed replay bombards the neocortex. It physically forces the neocortex to pay attention. It's saying, here's the pattern, learn this, wire this. This chemical dialogue, this transfer from the USB stick to the hard drive, is what actually stabilizes a memory into a permanent physical structure.
So if you don't sleep, you aren't just feeling tired the next day. You are literally leaving the files sitting on the fragile USB stick.
And that USB stick gets wiped the next morning to make room for new daily inputs. So the memory is either completely gone or it remains highly fragmented and unstable.
But there's another side to this memory equation that I found even more fascinating in the literature. We always talk about remembering, but the sources spend a mass amount of time talking about forgetting. And not passive forgetting, like, oops, I lost my keys, but active forgetting.
This is one of the most exciting frontiers in modern neuroscience. We used to think forgetting was just a failure of the system, just degradation over time, like an old photograph fading. But now we know that the brain has specific, targeted cellular mechanisms designed to actively erase memories. There are specific dopamine neurons, and these are different from the reward prediction ones we talked about earlier, that connect directly to our memory centers. And their explicit job is to be the demolition team.
The cleaning crew.
The demolition team. They release dopamine directly onto the enneagram, the physical trace of the memory, and they activate a very specific protein complex called RAC1, scribble, and cofilin.
RAC1, scribble, and cofilin. It sounds like a quirky boutique law firm, but the biological description of what they actually do is brutal.
It is violent at a cellular level. We have to visualize this physically. A memory is a physical connection between two neurons, a synapse. That synapse is held together by a cytoskeleton, an actual scaffolding of proteins. The RAC1 complex acts like a microscopic wrecking ball. It chemically dismantles the scaffolding. It physically shreds the actin filaments that hold the synapse together. It severs the wire.
It effectively deletes the file by smashing the hard drive platter at that exact specific spot.
Yes. And the brain is doing this constantly while we are awake.
Why? Why spend energy destroying data?
Because of saturation. Think about your drive to work today. You saw thousands of cars. You saw the specific shape of a cloud over the highway. You saw a license plate ending in 492. If you kept all of that, if your brain consolidated every single sensory input into permanent storage, your neural networks would jam completely. You would be totally overwhelmed by useless noise. The brain must prune the data.
So active forgetting is a vital survival mechanism. We need to actively clear the noise just to be able to see the signal.
Exactly. But here's the critical problem. How does the biological machine know what to keep, like the lesson about the driving habit, and what to shred, like the random license plate? This is exactly where sleep comes in again. The research shows that the physical state of sleep, specifically the chemical environment of the sleeping brain, actually blocks the RAC1 demolition curve.
That puts a stop work order on the demolition site.
It inhibits the dopamine neurons that trigger the forgetting process. So during sleep, the shredding stops entirely. This creates a beautifully protected window of time. And in that protected window, the hippocampus is doing that high-speed fast-forward replay we talked about. So the important stuff, the stuff we repeated, the stuff tagged with emotional weight, gets replayed and strengthened. The scaffolding gets reinforced with biological concrete. Then, when you wake up and the demolition crew comes back online, those reinforced memories are strong enough to survive the wrecking ball. The weak, random memories, the noise get effortlessly scrubbed away.
That is such a delicate, incredible balance. It's a literal race. You have to consolidate the memory before the RAC1 complex deletes it. And sleep is the referee that pauses the game just long enough to let the consolidation team win.
That is a perfect analogy, and there is one final crucial step to this nightly cleanup, which the papers call synaptic downscaling. See, learning creates big, highly effective, but very energy-expensive synapses. We can't keep making them bigger and bigger forever. Our skulls would run out of physical space, and our bodies would run out of energy to fuel them. So during sleep, the brain turns down the volume on everything across the board. It physically shrinks all synapses by a small, uniform percentage.
It scales everything down globally.
The strong memories, the ones we just spent the night consolidating, survive this shrinking process. They remain functional. The weak memories, the background noise, shrink below the threshold of connection and simply vanish. This perfectly restores the brain's baseline energy balance. You wake up with a clean slate, metabolically ready to learn again.
It really reframes that subjective feeling of waking up refreshed. You aren't just rested, you're physically leaner. Your neural networks have been actively pruned, the noise has been aggressively cleared, and the important files have been moved to deep storage. You're running on an optimized operating system.
You are waking up with a physically upgraded brain every single morning.
Okay, so let's try to pull all of these massive threads together for the listener. We have the habit, which is the architecture of automation. We have the dopamine, which is the predictor and driver. And we have sleep, the update and maintenance protocol. If we look at this through the cycle of optimization, let's walk through a typical 24-hour day.
Okay, let's trace the full life cycle of a behavior. Morning and daytime, this is the acquisition phase. You are awake. You are encountering cues in your environment. Your prefrontal cortex is actively navigating the novel parts of the world. Your dopamine system is running that prediction error algorithm constantly in the background. Did that work? Was that good? When you find something that works, you drink the coffee, you check the email, dopamine stamps it, it says, save this. If you repeat it, the brain begins the physical migration. It starts building the dirt path in the DMS. If you repeat it enough, it starts paving the superhighway in the DLS. It starts chunking the steps into a single macro.
So you're basically recording the raw footage during the day.
You are recording the raw footage and tagging the important scenes. But the final edit hasn't happened yet. The physical connections are still messy and fragile. The RAC1 demolition crew is prowling around the edges, trying to delete the weak traces. Then it comes nighttime. You go to sleep. This is the offline phase. The brain puts up the do not disturb sign. It actively inhibits the demolition crew. The hippocampus connects to the neocortex and starts the high-speed replay. Here is the coffee habit. Here is the driving route. It transfers the critical data. Then the global downscaling happens. The volume is turned down, the noise of the traffic, the color of the stranger's shirt, that all gets washed away to save energy.
And then the next morning?
The next morning, you wake up, the habit is now physically slightly more myelinated, the path is smoother, the memory is more stable and independent of the hippocampus, the emotional charge of the previous day has been processed, you are neurologically ready to run the loop again, but faster and more efficiently than you did yesterday.
It's just a relentless biological cycle. Acquisition, consolidation, pruning, over and over. And this brings us right back to the start of our conversation, the concept of inspection. When you look at this entire interconnected system, the way the DLS takes over to save glucose, the way dopamine creates drive based on simple prediction errors, the way sleep edits our physical memories, it raises a really big, somewhat uncomfortable question about control.
It's the ultimate so what of neurobiology. It forces us to confront the hard reality that conscious willpower, that voice in our head that proudly says, I am in charge, is a very, very small part of the total operation. The prefrontal cortex is the CEO, yes, but the CEO is only in the office for maybe an hour a day. The rest of the time, the factory is running entirely on the automated protocols established by the basal ganglia and refined by those nightly updates.
We tend to think every action is a fresh choice. I chose to pick up my phone right now. But what we're learning is that, actually, the cue appeared, the dopamine spike to create anticipation, and the myelinated loop fired the action. The actual choice happened thousands of repetitions ago.
Exactly. We are living in the house we built yesterday. If you have a habit of checking your phone, it's not because you are morally weak in this exact moment. It's because you spent 3 years meticulously building a myelinated superhighway in your DLS, and your brain is simply using the most energy-efficient road available to it. Understanding this reality of control fundamentally changes how you approach changing yourself.
It shifts the entire strategy. You stop trying to white-knuckle the moment. You literally cannot out-wrestle a heavily myelinated loop with a tired, energy-depleted PFC. Instead, you have to start thinking like an architect. You have to look at the system and say, okay, the machine is going to run. How do I alter the cue?
Yeah.
How do I manipulate the prediction error? How do I protect my sleep so the biological edit happens correctly?
You move from being the frustrated driver to being the clever mechanic. If the car keeps veering left, you don't just keep exhausting yourself yanking the wheel to the right. You pull over and align the physical tires. You fix the underlying mechanism. For a human habit, that means forcing the brain back into goal-directed mode. And we have to be honest, that is painful. To break a habit, you have to consciously, forcefully inhibit the DLS. You have to wake up the PFC. You have to unchunk the sequence. You have to say, wait, I'm feeling the cue. I'm not going to do the routine. That requires massive metabolic energy. It feels bad. It feels like intense friction.
But that friction is literally the physical feeling of the electrical signal being forced off the paved highway back onto the rocky dirt road.
That is exactly what it is biologically. And knowing that the psychological discomfort is just biological friction makes it bearable. You can observe it objectively. You can say, oh, my DLS is screaming for a dopamine resolution right now. That's interesting. You objectify the urge. You don't identify with it as a personal failure.
And I think that brings us perfectly to a final provocation for you, the listener. If the brain is evolutionarily designed to automate behavior to bypass conscious thought, and if the neurobiology of sleep independently determines what we keep and what we physically delete from our brains, how much of our daily subjective choice is actually just the playback of a biological recording?
I think the scientific answer is far more than we are comfortable admitting. We cherish the illusion of constant moment-to-moment free will, but biologically, we are creatures of momentum. We are the sum of our past physical repetitions, consolidated by our past sleep cycles. Most of today is just a biological echo of yesterday.
That sounds completely terrifying at first, but the more I think about it, I also find it weirdly empowering.
Why empowering?
Because it means that what I choose to do right now, in this moment of friction, really matters. If I engage my PFC now, if I actively take the hard dirt road today, I am starting to pave a new highway. I am giving my hippocampus something new to replay tonight. I am physically building the recording that future me will get to play on autopilot.
That is the ultimate takeaway from the biology. We are the actual architects of our own automation. We build the physical machine we have to live inside.
I think I'm going to need to sleep on that. Literally. I need to let my Rack 1 complex clear out the background noise of the day so I can hold on to this model.
Let the sleep spindles do their work. Protect that USB stick.
Thank you for joining me for this deep dive. It has definitely changed the way I look at the machinery inside my own head.
It was a pleasure to be here.
And to the listener, take a look at your own loops today. Listen to the engine, observe the machine without judgment. We'll see you in the next deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah, it's really good to be back.
You know, usually when we sit down here, we have a very specific target. Like, we're looking at a historical event or a new piece of tech or, maybe a business philosophy.
Right.
We have our stack of papers, we have our notes, and we try to deconstruct that specific thing.
We take an object and we dissect it. Yeah.
But today is different. I was looking through the research stack you sent over, and it is a massive stack, by the way.
I might have gone a little overboard.
No, it's great. But I realized that today, we aren't looking at an object. We're turning the microscope around.
We're looking at the lens itself.
Exactly. We're looking at you, listener.
Yeah.
Or, to be more specific, we're looking at what is physically, biologically happening inside your head right this second as you hear our voices.
It's a bit meta, isn't it?
It is super meta.
Yeah.
But it's surprisingly violent.
The violent. That's a strong word for a deep dive about learning.
Well, yeah. Because I think most of us And I definitely include myself in this. We have this default setting where we view learning as this very passive, gentle process.
Right.
You sit in a chair, you put on your headphones, you listen to us talk, you just sort of absorb it, like a sponge sitting in water.
The osmosis theory of learning. Just let it soak in.
Exactly. Or the blank slate. The idea that the brain is just this empty chalkboard and I am writing facts on it with chalk. And when the deep dive is over, boom, you have the facts. No pain, no gain.
And the research we have in front of us today essentially takes that blank slate theory, crumbles it up, lights it on fire, and throws it in the trash.
It really does, because as I read through these papers, from the mechanics of the basal ganglia to the neurobiology of forgetting the picture that emerges, is that learning isn't passive absorption at all.
No, it's a restructuring.
It is a physical, biological, and sometimes genuinely destructive event.
It is, and I think that's the hook for this deep dive. If you are listening to this right now, you aren't just consuming content. You are standing at the starting line of a neurological marathon.
Which is wild to think about.
We are going to talk about proteins physically scrubbing your synapses. We're going to talk about electrical rhythms hijacking your heartbeat. We're going to talk about how thinking actually burns calories and changes the physical structure of your brain.
And we are organizing this around a specific framework.
Right.
Because the research points to a cycle.
Yeah.
It's not just a random collection of biological events.
Right. It points to a system. The research suggests that if you want to actually learn, not just hear, but learn, you have to move through 4 distinct stages: input, processing, output, and creation.
Listening, thinking, explaining, creating.
Exactly. And we are going to decode why that specific sequence is the most powerful way to hack your own biology.
And why the system that we have going on right here, us talking, you listening, the creation aspect is actually incredibly powerful.
We're going to explain why it feels good to learn, why it's so hard to build a creative habit, and why it is so frighteningly easy to sit on your couch and doom scroll social media until 2 in the morning.
Yeah, that last one, that hits a little too close to home. I think we all been there.
Oh, absolutely.
You have the best intentions to learn Spanish or write a novel, and 3 hours later you're watching videos of hydraulic presses crushing things.
It's biology. It's not a character flaw, it's chemistry. And specifically, it's about how your reward loops are wired.
So let's get into it. We have a roadmap. Biology of memory, chemistry of addiction, physics of habits. But we have to start with the listener starting right now. The input.
The moment sound hits the ear.
So let's go back to that blank slate idea. Because even before I say a word, the research suggests the brain isn't just waiting, is it? It's not sitting there like an idle tape recorder.
No, and this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions in neuroscience. There is this persistent myth that the brain is a recording device. You know you have a tape recorder in your head. I speak, the microphone picks it up, and your brain rates it to the tape.
Which feels intuitively true. I hear you. I remember what you said. It feels very linear.
But the source material, specifically looking at some fascinating work from the Max Planck Institute, shows that the brain is actually a prediction machine.
A prediction machine. Okay, unpack that for me.
It means your brain is always living in the future, just a tiny split second in the future. It isn't waiting for the input to arrive to process it. It is constantly generating a model of what it thinks is about to happen, and then it compares reality against that model.
So right now, the listener's brain isn't just listening to me, it's guessing what I'm going to say next.
Constantly. It's analyzing your tone, your cadence, your vocabulary, and it's projecting forward. It's saying, he's going to say this, he's going to say neuroscience.
Wow.
And it does this to save energy. If the prediction is right, the brain doesn't have to work as hard to process the auditory signal.
It's like predictive text on your phone, but for reality.
That is a great analogy. And the primary tool it uses to do this, at least in the context of listening to a discussion like this, is rhythm.
And this is where we get into entrainment.
Neural entrainment. This is the stuff that sounds like science fiction.
Yeah, I read this section 3 times. Explain it to me like I'm 5. Because the concept of neural oscillations can get heavy really fast.
Okay. Imagine you were at a rock concert. The drummer starts a beat. Boom, boom, clap, boom, clap, clap. What happens to the crowd?
They start clapping, they stomp their feet, they nod their heads.
Right, but even before they move their bodies, their brains are locking in. You anticipate the next boom before it happens. That is entrainment.
Okay.
Now take that down to the cellular level. Your brain is made of neurons that fire in waves, electrical oscillations.
Brainwaves, like alpha, beta, theta.
Exactly. When you listen to someone speak like you and I are speaking now, our voices have a rhythm, a meter. And the listener's brainwaves literally synchronize with that rhythm.
So their brain cells are firing in time with our voices.
Yes. The hardware in the auditory cortex locks onto the signal. It's not just processing sound, it is physically dancing to the beat of the speech.
That is bizarrely intimate.
It really is. And here is where it gets practical. This lock-on actually changes how you perceive reality.
This is the Dutch study, right? The top versus take thing.
Yes. This is a study on speech perception that really highlights how active this process is. So in Dutch, there is a clear difference between a word with a short vowel take and a word with a long vowel take.
Tuck. One is snappy, one is drawn out.
Now, usually that distinction is clear, but researchers found that they could trick the brain. They took a vowel sound that was ambiguous somewhere right in the middle between short and long, a hybrid.
A Frankenstein vowel.
Right, and they played it to people. But here's the trick. They changed the speed of the sentence before the word.
Okay, so sometimes the sentence leading up to it was spoken really fast, and sometimes it was spoken really slowly.
Exactly. And what they found was that if the preceding sentence was fast, talking a mile a minute fast, the brain was primed to expect short, rapid sounds.
Makes sense.
So when it heard that ambiguous vowel, it perceived it as long by comparison.
Because the brain was calibrated for speed.
Yes. But if the preceding sentence was slow and lethargic, that same ambiguous vowel sounded short.
Wait, so the word didn't change at all. The audio file was identical.
Identical audio file for the target word.
But the context, the rhythmic prediction from the earlier words changed what the person actually heard.
It changed the reality. The brain didn't record the sound. It interpreted the sound based on its prediction model.
That has huge implications for how we learn. It means that if I'm zoning out, or if the speaker has a rhythm I can't lock onto, I'm not just missing details, I'm physically failing to predict the signal.
And that is exactly why passive listening is a myth. If you aren't actively entrained, if your prediction machine isn't running, the data just bounces off. You might hear it, but you aren't processing it.
So we've got the signal coming in. The prediction machine is whirring away guessing the next word. But where does that signal actually go? Because we aren't just floating in a sea of rhythm. There is hard anatomy here.
There's a very specific hardware stack, and it starts with the bouncer.
The bouncer.
The thalamus.
Ah, the thalamus. I always think of the thalamus as a switchboard operator, but bouncer is better.
It's a bouncer because it decides who gets into the club. Your ears are picking up everything. The hum of the fridge, the car driving by outside, my voice, the sound of your own breathing.
Yeah, if all of that went to your conscious mind, you'd go insane.
That'd be complete chaos. So the thalamus sits at the base of the brain and filters it. It decides what is signal and what is noise. It controls attention.
So if I'm listening to this deep dive, but I'm also scrolling social media on my phone, the thalamus is basically freaking out.
It's toggling. It's opening the door for the audio, then slamming it shut to open the door for the visual feed, then slamming it shut again. And every time it toggles, you lose fidelity. This is why multitasking is a biological lie.
But let's assume the listener is focused. The thalamus opens the velvet rope. Where does the signal go next?
It goes to the auditory cortex, that's the dance floor where the rhythm entrainment happens, and then it heads to the VIP section.
The hippocampus.
The hippocampus. This is the star of the show when it comes to memory.
It's the seahorse-shaped thing in the middle of the brain, right?
Correct. And its job is relational memory. It is trying to link this new input, my voice, these facts about entrainment, to things you already know.
So it's actively searching.
It's frantically searching your library for connections. Do we know anything about Dutch vowels? No. Do we know anything about rock concerts? Yes. Link it to that.
So just by sitting here and focusing on this discussion, we are lighting up the thalamus, the auditory cortex, and the hippocampus.
That sounds like a lot of activity for just sitting still.
It is a massive amount of activity. But, and here's the kicker, and this is crucial, you haven't learned anything yet.
What? We just did all that work. We entrained, we filtered, we connected.
You have perceived, you have attended, but you haven't learned. Why not?
Because right now, that information is sitting on the loading dock.
The loading dock. I like this metaphor. Let's dig into this.
Imagine your brain as a massive warehouse. The trucks, which are my voice, have arrived. The thalamus signed for the delivery. The hippocampus has unloaded the boxes onto the concrete platform.
Okay.
But are the boxes in the inventory system?
No, they're just sitting outside.
Are they safe?
Definitely not. If it rains, or if another truck comes in too fast, they're ruined or gone.
Exactly. This is short-term memory. It is fragile. It is temporary. If you stop listening now and go about your day without doing anything else, those boxes will likely disappear within hours.
So the brain basically clears the dock to make room for the next truck.
Yes, it's a throughput system, not a storage system.
So how do we move them? How do we get the boxes off the loading dock and onto the permanent shelves in the warehouse?
You have to engage the second part of the system. You have to stop just listening and start processing.
Which brings us to part 2, thinking. Now, when we talk about thinking and memory, we have to deal with another bad metaphor, the filing cabinet.
Oh, the filing cabinet. It is the most persistent myth in education.
I mean, it's how I've always visualized it. I learned a fact like the thalamus is the bouncer. I write it on an index card, I open a drawer labeled brain facts, and I drop it in.
And it stays there forever.
Right. If I want to remember it, I just open the drawer and pull out the card.
And that is completely wrong. It simplifies the brain to the point of total inaccuracy. If you look at the research, memory is nothing like a filing cabinet. It's an orchestra.
An orchestra. Okay, paint the picture for me.
A filing cabinet is static. You put a paper in, it sits there, nothing happens. But an orchestra is dynamic. It involves distinct sections, strings, woodwinds, percussion, all working together to create a single piece of music.
So a memory isn't a single thing sitting in one neuron. It's a performance.
Precisely. It is distributed across the brain. When you remember your childhood kitchen, you aren't pulling up a JPEG file. You are conducting a symphony.
I'm the conductor.
You are the conductor.
Oh.
And you are pointing to the visual cortex and saying, play the melody of the yellow wallpaper. You're pointing to the olfactory cortex and saying, play the harmony of the smell of toast. You're pointing to the amygdala and saying, give me the emotional rhythm of feeling safe.
And all those parts fire together to reconstruct the moment.
It is a reconstruction every single time. And because it's a reconstruction, it's expensive, it takes energy, and before we can even get to that long-term symphony, we have to deal with the bottleneck.
Bottleneck.
Yeah.
This is working memory.
The brain scratch pad. This is where thinking actually happens. If you are holding an idea in your head right now, if you are trying to visualize that orchestra, you are using working memory.
And the source material says this scratch pad is disappointingly small.
It is tiny. We used to think of the magic number 7, that you could hold 7 items, plus or minus 2.
That's why phone numbers are 7 digits, right? That was the logic.
That was the theory. But newer research suggests that was highly optimistic. The real limit is probably closer to 4.
4 items. That's it. That's my entire RAM.
4 distinct chunks of information. That is the width of the doorway into your mind.
That explains so much about my life. It explains why if I have a great idea in the shower, like I've solved a huge problem at work, and then I step out and realize I'm out of shampoo and I need to buy milk.
And poof, the idea is gone.
It's totally gone. I can remember the shampoo and the milk, but the genius idea is vaporized.
Because you pushed it off the scratch pad, you replaced great idea with buy milk. The central executive, which is the part of working memory that acts as the boss, dumped the old data to make room for the new data. It's a brutal prioritization engine.
So if the doorway is only 4 items wide, how do we ever learn anything complex? Quantum physics is more than 4 items. The plot of a novel is way more than 4 items.
We use chunking, we group things, but ultimately the only way to bypass that bottleneck is to move the information out of working memory and into long-term memory.
We have to get the boxes off the loading dock and onto the warehouse shelves.
And that process is called consolidation.
Consolidation. And this is the dialogue between the teacher and the student.
That's the best way to visualize it. The hippocampus is the teacher. It learns fast. It grabs the new information quickly. It's agile. It has the box in its hands.
Okay.
But the neocortex, the massive, wrinkly outer layer of the brain where we store our long-term knowledge, our wisdom, is a slow learner. It is stubborn. It resists change.
Why does it resist? Wouldn't we want it to learn fast?
Stability.
Yeah.
You don't want your entire worldview to change just because you heard one podcast. The neocortex needs proof that this information is valuable. So the hippocampus has to keep nagging it.
It has to verify the data.
Basically, this is what happens during systems consolidation. The hippocampus replays the events of the day to the neocortex. It says, here's the pattern, here's the pattern, here's the pattern.
This happens mostly during sleep, right?
Yes. This is why sleeping on it is actual biological advice. During slow-wave sleep, the hippocampus is literally firing signals to the neocortex, training it to form those autonomous connections.
So if you pull an all-nighter to study for a test, you are basically jamming boxes onto the loading dock, but you never give the warehouse workers the night shift to put them away.
Exactly. And by the time you sit down to take the test, the loading dock is overflowing, boxes are falling off into the mud, and you blank out. You might have had the info in your short-term memory the night before, but you haven't built the structure.
But there's a shortcut here, isn't there? The the notes mention schemas.
Schemas. The rich get richer effect of learning.
I love this concept because it perfectly explains why it's so incredibly hard to start learning a completely new subject, but so easy to master one you already know.
A schema is just a web of knowledge you already have. It's the shelving that's already built in the warehouse. Let's say you are a huge baseball fan. You have a massive baseball schema in your neocortex.
Right. I know the rules, the players, the history. I know what an ERA is.
If I tell you a new, obscure rule about the infield fly ball, your hippocampus doesn't have to work very hard. It just takes that new fact and velcros it onto the existing web.
It already has a place to live.
But if I tell you a fact about, 18th century French knitting technique,
I have absolutely zero schema for that. I don't even know what a knit and a purl is.
so the fact slides right off. It has nothing to latch onto. It requires intense repetition to build that initial web. The brain asks, where do I put this? And finding no answer, it often just discards it.
So thinking the processing phase is really about trying to actively find the right Velcro.
It is. It's about active connection. Asking yourself, how does this relate to what I already know? That is what deeper thinking is. It's schema matching.
But here's the thing that really surprised me in the research. We constantly talk about remembering and want to keep everything. But the papers suggest that a huge part of this system is actually about destruction.
Active forgetting.
Yeah. I usually think of forgetting as a failure. Like I'm getting old, or I'm not smart enough, or I need to eat more blueberries. But you're saying it's a feature, not a bug.
It is a biological necessity. Imagine that gardener we talked about in the notes. If you have a rose bush and you want big, beautiful blooms, what do you have to do to it?
You have to prune it. You have to cut back the dead branches. You have to cut back the little suckers that steal the energy from the main flowers.
Exactly. If you kept every single leaf and twig, the bush would become a tangled, suffocating mess. It would literally collapse under its own weight.
And the brain is exactly the same.
The brain consumes 20% of your body's energy. It is incredibly expensive to run. If you kept every detail of every breakfast you've ever eaten, every license plate you've ever seen, every random face you passed on the subway, you would drown in noise.
You wouldn't be able to find the memory of your wedding day because it would be buried under a mountain of useless commuter data.
Precisely. To think clearly, you must prune the noise. So the brain has a cleaning crew.
It does.
We have proteins like RAC1 that are chemically designed to scrub weak connections. They are the janitors, or the demolition crew.
That is slightly terrifying. I have proteins in my head right now over something.
Yes, right now, but it's selective. And this is why the system we are discussing matters so much.
How so?
Because when you engage in thinking, when you actively focus on an idea, when you retrieve it, you are putting a do not disturb sign on that neural pathway. You are telling the janitors, don't scrub this one, I need this.
And everything else gets swept away.
Everything else gets pruned. So thinking isn't just about storage, it's about signal preservation. It's about saving the signal from the biological trash compactor.
Wow. Okay, so let's recap where we are. We've listened, we've primed the prediction machine, we've thought, we've moved the box off the loading dock and put a do not disturb sign on it.
Yeah.
But it's still just a box on a shelf.
Yeah.
It's not useful yet. It's not automatic.
No, to make it useful and to make it permanent, we have to change the physical structure of the warehouse itself. We need to rewire the building.
And that brings us to the output phase, explaining and creating.
This is where we shift from the biology of memory to the physics of wiring. We need to talk about neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around on LinkedIn a lot. You know, rewire your brain for success. But what does it actually mean physically?
Physically, it means synaptic plasticity, the strengthening or weakening of connections between neurons. There's a famous axiom in neuroscience. Neurons that fire together, wire together. This is long-term potentiation, or LTP.
So if I have a neuron for podcast and a neuron for learning, and I activate them at the same time repeatedly, they physically grow closer.
In a sense, yes. The synapse, the microscopic gap between them becomes more efficient, more receptors appear, the chemical signal can jump the gap faster. But to really see the power of output, of actively doing something, we have to look at the London taxi drivers.
The McGuire study from 2000, I love this study. It's an absolute classic.
It really is the gold standard for structural neuroplasticity.
For those who don't know, tell us about the knowledge, because this isn't just driving around with a GPS.
Not at all. To become a licensed black cab driver in London, you have to pass a test called the knowledge. It is arguably the hardest memory test in the world. You have to memorize 25,000 streets within a 6-mile radius of Charing Cross.
That is insane.
You have to know every landmark, every hotel, every police station, every restaurant.
And you have to know the absolute quickest route between any 2 points instantly.
Without a map, without a smartphone, just your brain. Candidates spend 3 to 4 years studying for this. They ride around London on mopeds with clipboards in the rain, constantly visualizing the routes.
So McGuire and her team decided to scan the brains of these drivers.
Yes, and what they found was shocking. They found that the posterior hippocampus, the back part of the seahorse, which is responsible for spatial navigation, was significantly larger in taxi drivers than in control subjects.
Physically bigger. The brain literally grew like a bicep.
Exactly. And the volume correlated with the time spent driving. The longer they had been doing the job, the bigger that part of the brain was. The brain physically restructured itself to accommodate the map of London.
And this is a detail often missed, and I think it's crucial. There was a trade-off.
There is always a trade-off. You don't get something for nothing in biology.
What was it?
Their anterior hippocampus, the front part, was smaller.
What does that front part do?
It's often associated with encoding new visual memories or complex character information. So to build the supermap of London, the brain had to borrow resources from elsewhere.
Neuroplasticity is a redistribution of wealth.
In a way, yes. But the main lesson here is that the cognitive demand of navigation, which is a form of creation, you are creating a route in real time, literally changed the structure of the organ.
And this connects directly to why explaining and creating are so incredibly powerful. When you just listen, you're a passive passenger. When you create, you are navigating.
You are forcing those neurons to fire in a specific sequence. You are driving the taxi. And when you do that repeatedly, you trigger another critical process. Myelination.
Myelination, superhighway.
Myelin is a fatty substance. It's actually white, which is why we call it white matter that wraps around the axons of nerve cells. It acts exactly like the plastic insulation on an electrical wire.
And what does that insulation do?
Speed, pure speed.
How much speed are we talking?
An unmyelinated signal, a bare wire, moves at about 1 to 2 miles per hour. It's slow, it leaks energy. It's like driving a car on a bumpy gravel road full of potholes.
2 miles per hour, that's walking speed, that's terrible.
But a fully myelinated signal, that moves at up to 200 miles per hour.
Whoa.
It is a Ferrari on the Autobahn. It is fast, efficient, and almost completely automatic.
So when we say practice makes perfect, what we're biologically saying is practice builds myelin.
Yes. Think about when you try to explain a complex idea to a friend for the first time. Let's say you're trying to explain how the hippocampus works after this session.
I'm going to be stumbling. I'm saying, I'm searching for the words.
That stumbling is the signal moving down the gravel road. The neurons are firing, but the connection is weak and uninsulated. It takes a massive amount of conscious effort.
It feels like actual work.
But if you explain it 5 times, 10 times.
It gets smoother.
Yeah.
Stop saying, the words just flow.
You are wrapping that specific circuit in myelin. You are paving the road. Eventually, you can explain it without even thinking. It becomes automatic. You have built a superhighway.
And this is exactly why output the creating phase is non-negotiable. You can listen to 1,000 deep dives, but if you never force the signal down the road yourself, you never pave it.
You're just staring at a map instead of driving the car.
So we've built the road. But what drives the car? What makes us actually want to drive the car? Because let's be honest, doing the work, explaining, creating, studying, is hard. It is so much easier to just watch Netflix.
This brings us to the engine, the chemical engine.
Dopamine.
Dopamine.
Now everyone knows dopamine. It's the pleasure molecule. It's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll molecule.
That is the common pop science definition. But it's actually a pretty big misunderstanding of what it does.
Right, the record for us.
Dopamine isn't about liking the reward. It's not the feeling of satisfaction you get when you finally eat the cake. It's about wanting the reward. It's the craving. It is the currency of motivation and learning.
So dopamine isn't the cake. It's the drive to get off the couch and walk to the bakery.
Exactly. And crucially, it relies on a mechanism called prediction error.
Prediction error. This sounds like a computer glitch, but you're saying it's a learning tool.
It's a brilliant learning mechanism. Let's go back to the coffee shop analogy from the source text.
Okay, I need coffee.
You walk to your usual coffee shop. You expect a coffee to be good. You pay, you drink it, and it is exactly as good as you expected.
Okay, I'm a satisfied customer.
But your dopamine neurons, they flatline. No spike at all.
I got exactly what I wanted. Why no dopamine?
because the prediction was perfectly accurate. There's nothing new to learn. The brain says, okay, our model of the world is correct. We know this coffee shop is good. No need to update the software.
So reliability kills dopamine.
In a sense, yes. Now imagine you walk down a side street and find a tiny hole-in-the-wall cafe you've never seen before. You order a coffee, and it is the best coffee you have ever tasted in your entire life.
Mind blow. Taste buds singing.
That is a positive prediction error. The reward was significantly better than expected.
And that triggers the spike.
Massive dopamine spike. That spike tells the nucleus accumbens the reward center. Whoa! That was amazing. Whatever you just did, whatever route you took, whatever door you opened, remember it, wire it in, do it again.
It's highlighting the exact path to success.
Exactly. And conversely, if the coffee is terrible,
Negative prediction error.
dopamine drops below baseline. That teaches the brain, don't do that again. Prune that behavior.
So how does this relate to our system of creating versus the modern addiction of social media? Because they both involve dopamine.
They do. And this brings us to the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward.
The basic architecture of habit.
But in the modern world, this loop is hijacked. Think about scrolling on an app.
The cue is boredom. The routine is scrolling.
And the reward, it's variable.
Variable reward schedules. This is the slot machine mechanic.
Exactly. Scroll. Boring video. Boring video. Boring video. Then boom, a funny meme, a cute dog. Positive prediction error.
I didn't expect it, so it feels better.
And because you don't know when the next one is coming, your dopamine system stays on high alert. It keeps you seeking. It keeps you pulling the lever.
It's an endless loop of seeking, but never fully satisfying.
Correct. It keeps you in the sensoromotor loop, which is habitual and automatic. You are basically a zombie.
So how does creating compete with that? Writing a script or taking notes on this podcast or explaining a concept is hard work. Where's the dopamine spike there?
Creating offers an entirely different kind of reward. When you take a complex idea like the concepts in this deep dive and you struggle with it, and then suddenly you get it, you snap the pieces together and explain it clearly.
That aha moment.
That provides an intrinsic reward. The deep satisfaction of making sense of the world releases dopamine. It closes the loop. But unlike the slot machine, which builds a passive compulsion, this builds a constructive habit.
It moves you from the sensoromotor loop to the associative loop.
Which is goal-directed, it's flexible. It's the difference between being a passenger in a car driven by an algorithm and being the driver.
It's the difference between the cheap sugar rush of a candy bar and the sustained energy of a steak dinner. Both give you calories, but one builds muscle and the other gives you diabetes.
That's a stark way to put it, but yes, absolutely.
So we know the input with the prediction machine, the process with consolidation, the output with myelination, and the engine with dopamine. But let's get really practical. How do we actually fix our broken habits? How do we rebuild the system for ourselves?
Part 5, hacking the system.
Because knowing the science is great, but if I can't stop doom scrolling at night, it doesn't actually help me.
We have to acknowledge the primary challenge, the status quo bias.
The brain is fundamentally lazy.
The brain is efficient. It wants to conserve energy. That's why the basal ganglia takes over to put you on autopilot. It takes a massive amount of energy to override that.
So relying on pure willpower is a trap.
Willpower is a battery. It runs out. You can't just white knuckle your way to a new brain. You have to use strategy. And one of the most effective neurostrategies mentioned in the sources is habit stacking.
Habit stacking. This is where you piggyback a new habit onto an old one.
Yes. You identify a habit that is already super highway myelinated, something you do automatically every single day without thinking, like brushing your teeth or making your morning coffee.
That becomes the cue.
Exactly. You say, after I pour my coffee, which is the old habit, I will sit down and write down one thing I learned yesterday, the new habit.
You are using the existing strong cue to trigger the new routine. You aren't trying to build a dirt road from scratch in the wilderness. You're building an on-ramp to an existing highway.
Precisely. It massively reduces the friction.
And how long does this take? Because I've always heard 21 days is the magic number for a habit.
That is a total myth. That number comes from a plastic surgeon in the 1960s observing how long it took amputees to get used to losing a limb. It has literally nothing to do with behavioral habit formation.
Wow. So what does the real neuroscience say?
The research suggests it's an average of 66 days.
66 days. That's over 2 months.
And the range is huge. Anywhere from 18 to 254 days, depending on the complexity of the habit.
That is daunting. That is a long time to fight the status quo.
It takes time to move a behavior from the energy-expensive prefrontal cortex to the automatic basal ganglia. You are physically remodeling the architecture of the brain. It doesn't happen overnight.
But there's another factor that can speed this up or severely slow it down, right? Stress.
Stress, the absolute silent killer of creativity.
Biologically, what is stress doing to this learning system?
Stress floods the system with noradrenaline and cortisol, and it has a push-pull effect on memory.
What does that mean exactly?
Moderate stress, like the pressure of a deadline or the excitement of a new challenge, can actually enhance memory consolidation. It tells the brain, this is important, pay attention, this is survival data.
That's why we remember traumatic or highly emotional events so clearly.
Right, but chronic stress, high daily anxiety, that shuts down the prefrontal cortex.
The thinking and planning part.
It shuts down the flexible thinking needed for creativity. It locks you into the basal ganglia.
It pushes you back into autopilot. Just survive, don't innovate.
Exactly. So if you are highly stressed, you are biologically primed to fall back on your oldest, most ingrained habits like doom scrolling or binge eating.
So managing stress isn't just about wellness or self-care. It's a biological prerequisite for deep learning.
Absolutely. You cannot rebuild the warehouse while it's on fire. But here is the most hopeful part of the research. This is the one more thing that really blew my mind when reviewing the literature. We used to think memories were fixed. Once they were consolidated, they were read only.
Like a PDF file. You could open it and read it, but you can't edit it.
But research into reconsolidation changes everything.
This is the preprental stuff, right? This feels straight out of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
It really does. Researchers found that if they gave people a beta blocker called propranolol, which blocks the physical effects of adrenaline while they were actively recalling a traumatic memory, the memory became significantly weaker.
Wait, walk me through that. So just by remembering it while in a chemically calm state, they changed the memory itself.
Yes, they disrupted the reconsolidation. This proves that every single time you retrieve a memory, every time you pull the box off the shelf to look at it, it becomes malleable again.
It turns back into wet clay.
Exactly. It enters a labile state, and then when you put it back, it hardens again. But it hardens in its new shape.
That is profound. It means that when we engage in this system, when we take an idea, think about it deeply, and then explain it or create something with it, we aren't just accessing a file. We are actively rewriting the code. We are updating the software of our own minds.
We are active participants in the construction of our own knowledge. We aren't just libraries storing books. We are the authors continuously revising the text.
So let's bring this all home. Let's synthesize this incredible system one last time for the listener.
It's a 4-stage loop. First, listening, the input phase. You are priming the prediction machine. You are using rhythm to entrain your brain waves to the signal. You are letting the bouncer in the thalamus do his job.
Second, thinking, the processing phase. You are moving that signal from the fragile loading dock of working memory to the permanent warehouse. You are connecting it to existing schemas. You're putting the do not disturb sign on the box so the protein janitors don't prune it away.
Third, explaining and creating. The output phase. This is the heavy lifting. You are forcing neurons to fire in sequence. You are triggering long-term potentiation. You are literally wrapping those circuits in myelin. You are moving your knowledge from a bumpy gravel road to a 200-mile-per-hour superhighway.
And finally, the chemical reward. By closing the loop, by creating something tangible, you trigger the dopamine system in a healthy, intrinsic way. You build a habit of creation rather than a habit of passive consumption.
And engaging this system protects you against the forgetting curve. It builds cognitive reserve. It literally makes your brain bigger, faster, and more energetically efficient over time.
So here is the question we want to leave you with today. The research shows that a huge percentage of our daily behavior, some studies say nearly half, is driven entirely by the basal ganglia, by habit.
By autopilot. We are, in many ways, just creatures of habit. We are passengers.
So if you aren't actively engaging this system, if you aren't intentionally listening, thinking, and then creating, are you actually in control of your mind? Or are you just a collection of passive habits, constantly reacting to external cues?
Are you the driver, or are you just a passenger in a car driven by an algorithm?
We want you to take back the wheel. Don't just let this deep dive end and let your phone autoplay the next one. Take one piece of information you learned today. Maybe it's the London taxi drivers, maybe it's the prediction machine, maybe it's the wet clay memory concept, and don't just let it sit on the loading dock.
Do something with it right now.
Turn to a friend, call your mom, write Write it down in a journal or record a quick voice note. Explain it. Create something with it. Close the biological loop.
Because that is exactly how you build a mind that lasts.
Thanks for diving duck with us. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. I want you to try something for me, just for a second. Close your eyes.
Okay.
Seriously, do it. Now, I want you to conjure up the image of your childhood kitchen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and not just the visual, right? Try to get the smell, the linoleum, the hum of the refrigerator, maybe that specific quality of the light coming through the window at like 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah, it feels instant, doesn't it? Like you just reach into a drawer and pull out a photograph.
It totally does. It feels exactly like a recording I've kept stored away for 30 years. It feels complete. But the stack of papers we're looking at today, papers on neurobiology, molecular mechanics, the famous case of HM, they suggest that feeling is a total lie.
A complete illusion. If you want to understand what memory actually is, you have to, you basically have to burn the filing cabinet. You aren't retrieving a file, you are conducting an orchestra.
And that is the exact mission for this deep dive. We aren't just talking about remembering the vague sense, we are looking at the pattern builder. The specific mechanism in your brain that stitches a smell, a sound, and a feeling into this ghost that basically lives in your head.
And specifically, we're talking about the conductor of that orchestra, the hippocampus. But we're going to go much deeper than, high school biology here. We're going to look at the silent enneagram, the actual physics of forgetting, and why your memory is, counterintuitively, designed to fail.
Right. So let's clear the deck first. The popular conception of memory is the video camera. You experience something, the brain hits record, it writes it to a hard drive, and you play it back later. Why is that model so wrong?
It's wrong because the brain doesn't have a single hard drive. It has thousands of separate processing centers. Think about that kitchen memory you just called up. That wasn't just one thing.
Right, it was a smell, a sight, a sound.
Exactly. But physically, those are in completely different zip codes in your brain. The smell of the floor wax, that's being processed in the olfactory bulb in the piriform cortex. The sight of the yellow curtains, that's way back in the occipital lobe at the back of your head. The feeling of the table under your hands. Somatosensory cortex.
So at the exact moment I experienced it, it wasn't a memory at all. It was just this chaotic splash of sensory data.
Ideally, yes. Just flashes of light and sound. If you didn't have a hippocampus, that's all they would ever be. Just disconnected noise. You wouldn't know that the smell belonged to the kitchen. You wouldn't connect the heat of the stove to the side of the flame.
So the hippocampus is the thing that ties the whole room together.
Is the binder. It's the master pattern builder. Its entire job is to sit in the middle of this storm of data and say, okay, the signal from the visual cortex, what you saw, plus the signal from the auditory cortex, what you heard, plus the signal from the amygdala, how you felt, these all belong together.
It creates an index.
It creates a map, like a pointer. When you remember that kitchen, the hippocampus isn't actually showing you the picture. It's sending a signal to the visual cortex saying, hey, replay that pattern you had 30 years ago. It orchestrates the reenactment.
Okay, let's get into the anatomy of this map. Because the pattern builder is a great title, but I really want to know what the construction crew looks like.
Well, physically, the hippocampus is actually quite beautiful. It's this curved, C-shaped structure tucked really deep inside the medial temporal lobe. The name literally comes from the Greek for seahorse, because that's what early anatomists thought it looked like.
And it's deep in there.
Very deep. It's part of the limbic system, which is the ancient emotional core of the brain. And that location is crucial because of who its neighbors are.
You mentioned the amygdala earlier. That's the neighbor, right?
Right next door. It's this almond-shaped structure right at the tip of the hippocampus. And this relationship is probably the single most important one for understanding our own lives.
Because the amygdala handles emotion.
Specifically, emotional intensity. Fear, aggression, extreme joy. Think of the amygdala as a highlighter pen. Your brain is processing gigabytes of data every single minute. Most of it's total trash. You don't need to remember the texture of the doorknob you touched 3 hours ago.
Unless the doorknob was red hot and burned me.
Bingo. If the doorknob burned you, the amygdala fires. It screams pain, threat, importance. It literally dumps neurochemicals onto the hippocampus that say, this pattern right here, the one happening right now, enforce it. Build it with concrete, not straw.
Wow. Which perfectly explains why I can remember a car accident from 10 years ago in vivid 4K resolution, but I cannot for the life of me remember a meeting I sat through last Tuesday.
Exactly. The meeting has zero emotional tag. The amygdala was basically asleep. So the hippocampus built a weak, flimsy connection that probably dissolved entirely by Wednesday. The car accident, though, they got the survival priority stamp.
Okay, so we have the visual and auditory inputs providing the raw sensory material. We have the amygdala providing the priority tag. And then the source material mentions the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. That's the CEO of Brain.
Executive, yeah. The prefrontal cortex is right up there behind your forehead. It deals with meaning, decision-making, context. It basically answers the so what question.
Give me an example of how the PFC fits into this specific pattern-building process.
Okay, imagine you see a lion. Visual cortex sees the shape. Auditory cortex hears the roar. Amygdala absolutely screams fear. But you're at the zoo.
Ah, so the prefrontal cortex says, chill out, there's glass between us.
Exactly. The PFC provides the context, safety. It dampens the fear response. And it integrates that meaning into the memory map. So the memory isn't just lion equals scary. It's lion plus zoo equals exciting, but safe.
Which brings us to a specific study that I found really confusing in the notes at first, but also kind of mind-blowing once it clicked. The Tanagawa Lab study from 2017.
Ah, yes. The silent enneagram. This is huge. I mean, this is Nobel Prize territory stuff right here.
So help me understand the old model first. Because for 50 years, we believed something very specific about how memories move through the brain, right?
We did. The standard model of consolidation basically said you learn something, it lives in the hippocampus for a few weeks, maybe years. Eventually, the hippocampus teaches the cortex, and the memory moves there permanently. We thought the cortex was just a blank slate at the beginning.
We just waits its turn to get the file.
Right. But Tanagawa's team used optogenetics, which is basically using light to control individual neurons. And they found something that completely broke the model. They found that the very moment a memory is formed, an engram, a physical trace, is created in the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex at the exact same time.
So the backup copy isn't made later, it's made instantly.
Instantly. But here's the catch. The enneagram in the hippocampus is loud. You can use it to recall the memory immediately. The enneagram in the cortex is silent.
Silent how? Like it's physically disconnected.
It's physically there, the cells have actually changed, but the synaptic connections are immature. They can't fire on their own. It's like downloading a zip file to your desktop, but the file is encrypted. It's sitting there, it's taking up space, but you cannot open it yet.
And the hippocampus holds the encryption key.
In a way, yes. Over time, the hippocampus sends signals to the cortex. That's the consolidation process, which matures that silent enneagram. It decrypts the file. Once the file is fully decrypted, you don't need the hippocampus anymore.
But why would the brain do that? Why store a silent, useless copy for weeks on end?
That is the million-dollar question. It might be a vetting process. The cortex is the permanent library. You don't want to fill the permanent library with trash. Maybe the silence is a probation period. Only if the memory proves useful or is reinforced does the brain invest the energy to unsilence it.
That is wild. It implies our cortex is just full of ghosts, like memories that are physically there but completely inaccessible to us.
We are definitely going to come back to that thought at the end. It's a haunting idea.
Okay, I want to drill down even further. We keep using metaphors like wiring and building and zip files, but let's get into the weeds. Section 2 of our deep dive, the construction site. What is literally physically happening when a memory is built?
We are talking about synaptic plasticity, the fundamental ability of the connection between two neurons to change its strength.
The famous phrase for this is neurons that fire together, wire together. That's Hebb's rule.
Donald Hebb, 1949. It's the golden rule of neuroscience. But the actual mechanism is what matters for us. It's called long-term potentiation, or LTP.
Okay, walk me through LTP. Use the construction analogy if it helps, but I really want to know the mechanics of how a memory becomes physical.
Imagine two neurons. Neuron A is sending a signal to neuron B. They are separated by a tiny, tiny gap called a synapse. To get the message across, neuron A throws chemicals, neurotransmitters, usually glutamate in this case, across that gap.
And neuron B catches them.
Right. Neuron B has receptors. Think of them as catching mitts or toll booths. In a normal, weak connection, neuron B might only have a few toll booths open. The signal gets through, but it's weak.
So I smell the coffee, but it doesn't trigger the memory of the kitchen.
Exactly. But if those neurons fire together forcefully and repeatedly, like when the amygdala is screaming, this is important, you get a massive electrical spike. And this spike causes a flood of calcium ions to rush into neuron B.
The source notes actually highlight calcium as the trigger.
Calcium is the foreman on the construction site. It rushes in and activates a specific protein called CAMKI-CNK2.
Okay, CAMKII, what does the foreman do once he's awake?
CAMKI sees the calcium and goes into absolute overdrive. It literally grabs more receptors, specifically AMPA receptors that are just floating inside the cell, and it physically shoves them into the surface membrane.
It opens more toll booths?
Instantly. It widens the highway. So now, the next time even a whisper of a signal comes from neuron A, neuron B has 10 times as many mitts to catch it. The connection is massively stronger. That is the memory. That physical change in the sensitivity of the synapse.
And that happens in seconds.
The initial phase, yes, very fast. Now, for it to last days or years, ChemKNI actually signals the nucleus of the cell to start producing new proteins to build permanent structural support. That involves a different protein called CREB. But the initial learning is just shuffling those receptors around.
But wait, we can't just keep adding lanes to the highway forever, right? Eventually, the brain would just be pure noise. Everything would trigger everything.
Exactly. You need a demolition crew, too. That's where long-term depression comes in. LTD.
And that's not depression like the mood disorder, but depression like pushing down, right?
Weakening, yes. If a connection isn't used, or if the firing is uncoordinated, a completely different chemical process triggers a protein called protein phosphatase 1, PP1. And PP1 does the exact opposite of ChemKI. It literally rips the receptors out of the membrane. It closes the toll booths.
So our memories are essentially the result of this microscopic tug-of-war between ChemKI trying to build bridges and PP1 trying to burn them down.
Constantly. Every single moment of your life, this battle is happening in your synapses. It's a push-pull system.
That makes the fragility of memory seem so much more chemical. Now, speaking of building, there's one more piece of the construction puzzle in the outline. Neurogenesis.
A birth of new neurons.
See, I thought for the longest time that adults just couldn't grow new brain cells. That was the established dogma, right? You get what you get, and then you just slowly kill them off with beer until you die.
That was the accepted dogma for most of the 20th century. But we were wrong. We now know that the hippocampus, specifically a tiny region inside it called the dentate gyrus, is a nursery. It is actively churning out thousands of new neurons every single day, even in old age.
And what do these baby neurons actually do?
They are hyper-excitable. They're basically looking for a job. Because they are young, they are much more plastic, much easier to wire up than the old, grumpy neurons. They are absolutely crucial for distinguishing between very similar memories.
And the source specifically mentions exercise here.
Yes. This is honestly the best news in the whole stack of papers. Aerobic exercise, running, swimming, anything that really gets the heart rate up boosts the production of something called BDNF.
Yeah.
Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is like miracle growth for these new neurons. It helps them survive and integrate into the network.
So going for a run isn't just good for your cardiovascular health. It's literally stocking your hippocampus with fresh construction workers.
It is the single best thing you can do for your memory performance, period.
Okay, so we've built the system, we understand the chemistry, but to really truly grasp the role of the hippocampus, we have to look at what happens when you take it away. We have to talk about Henry.
Henry Mollison, known to the world as HM.
I feel like we need to pause here and really respect the weight of this story, because in psychology textbooks, he's often just treated as a diagram. But this was a real man living an absolute horror story.
It was a profound tragedy, but it's a tragedy that entirely changed modern science. It starts in 1953. Henry is 27 years old. He has severe epilepsy that is completely destroying his life. He can't work, he can't maintain relationships, he's having these major debilitating seizures constantly.
Desperation is the word here.
Absolute desperation. His surgeon, Dr. William Scoville, proposes a radical experimental surgery. He plans to remove the medial temporal lobes on both sides of Henry's brain. He goes in and literally scoops out the hippocampus, the amygdala, and part of the surrounding cortex.
And purely in terms of the epilepsy, it actually worked.
The seizure stopped. He was effectively cured of the epilepsy. But when he woke up, he was completely trapped in time.
Describe what that looked like day to day, because he didn't forget who he was, right?
No. His retrograde memory, his memory of the past, was largely intact. He knew his parents. He knew all about World War II. Because those memories, as we discussed earlier, had already moved out of the hippocampus and into the permanent cortex library. They were safe.
But if you walked into his hospital room...
If you walked in, introduced yourself, shook his hand, had a totally normal, pleasant chat with him, and then you left the room and came back 2 minutes later, he would look at you with zero recognition. He would introduce himself to you all over again.
He lost the ability to convert the now into the then.
He had profound anterograde amnesia. He lived in a permanent present tense, roughly 30 seconds long. As soon as his attention shifted, the slate was wiped completely clean.
But, and this is the twist that essentially created modern neuroscience. Brenda Milner, the researcher who worked closely with him, discovered he actually could learn.
Yes. This is the famous mirror drawing task.
Right. Describe this for us because it perfectly separates the different types of memory we have.
So she asks Henry to trace the outline of a star on a piece of paper. But the catch is, he can't look at his hand directly. He can only look at his hand's reflection in a mirror. Have you ever tried to do this?
I have. It is incredibly frustrating. You want to move your hand left, but it goes right on the paper.
It's a motor skill. You have to physically train your muscles to reverse the input. So Henry tries it on day 1. And he's terrible at it. His lines are shaky. He goes way off the page. Typical.
But he does it again on day 2.
He comes back day 2. Now remember, he has absolutely no idea he did this yesterday. He sees the mirror apparatus and says, "What is this? I've never seen this before in my life."
But when he picks up the pen,
he's better. He makes far fewer mistakes. And by day 3, he's drawing the star perfectly. Smooth, fast, confident lines.
but he still swears he's never done the task before.
He looks at his own perfect drawing and literally says, "Huh, that was easier than I thought it would be." And this completely blew everyone's mind because it proved that memory is not one big filing cabinet. It is made of entirely different systems.
He lost his explicit memory, the declarative ability to say, "I did this yesterday." That's the hippocampus.
But he kept his implicit memory. The procedural skill, the muscle memory, that lives in the basal ganglia and the cerebellum. They were untouched by the surgery.
The orchestra was missing its conductor, but the drummer was still back there keeping the beat.
Exactly. The pattern builder for events was gone, but the habit builder was still completely online. It profoundly changed our understanding of human identity. You could learn things without ever knowing you were learning them.
That distinction, explicit versus implicit, is exactly why you can drive a car to work and arrive there with absolutely no memory of the actual drive. The basal ganglia drove the car. The hippocampus was busy thinking about what you're having for dinner.
Autopilot is literally just your brain switching control from the hippocampus to the basal ganglia.
Speaking of driving, let's shift gears to a group of people who use their hippocampus more than anyone else on Earth. The London taxi drivers.
The knowledge.
I love this study so much because it shows that the brain is like a muscle. It's not static.
So for listeners who might not know, London is an absolute maze. It is not a grid system like New York or Chicago. It's 25,000 twisty little streets, thousands of specific landmarks. To become a licensed black cab driver, you have to memorize all of it. It takes 3 to 4 years of intense full-time study.
They literally call the exam the knowledge.
And Eleanor McGuire and her team in the year 2000 asked a brilliant question. Does forcing your brain to build this massive, unbelievably detailed spatial map actually change the physical anatomy of the brain?
And the answer was yes.
A resounding yes. They put these drivers in MRI machines and found that the posterior hippocampus, the back part of the seahorse shape, was physically larger than in normal control subjects. Significantly larger.
Head had bulked up.
It had literally grown new connections, new structural tissue to accommodate the sheer size of the map. This is undeniable proof of structural neuroplasticity in adults.
But as with everything, there's no such thing as a free lunch in biology.
No, there isn't. They found a really fascinating trade-off. While the posterior hippocampus was huge, the anterior hippocampus, the front part, was actually smaller than average.
And what exactly does the front part do?
The anterior hippocampus is highly involved in encoding new environmental layouts. So these drivers were superhuman at navigating the streets of London. But if you drop them in, say, a video game maze they had never seen before, they were actually worse than average at learning it.
Their brain had specialized. It reallocated the physical resources. It basically said, we need way more space for London, so we're gonna bulldoze the new stuff department to make room.
It suggests there is a finite amount of real estate in the brain. You can't just grow everything endlessly. Specialized expertise actually comes at a neurological cost.
So we've covered the sensory inputs, the chemistry, the loss of the system with HM, and the hypergrowth of the system with the taxi drivers. But we still haven't fully explained how the memory moves from that fragile new state in the hippocampus to the prominent old state in the cortex.
The moving day. Systems consolidation.
And this brings us to sleep. We always hear, get a good night's sleep to remember things. But the actual mechanics describing these sources are totally fascinating. It's not just resting, it's active data processing.
It is highly active. So go back to that silent enneagram idea. You have the loud memory in the hippocampus and the silent encrypted one in the cortex. The hippocampus is the teacher, the cortex is the slow student.
During the day, the teacher's just taking notes.
Right. Then, when you finally fall into slow wave sleep, which is that deep non-REM sleep, the hippocampus starts talking. We see these rapid bursts of electrical activity called sharp wave ripples, or SWRs.
Ripple of data.
Think of it exactly as a compressed data packet. Inside that ripple, the hippocampus is actually replaying the neural pattern of the memory you formed that day. Coffee, kitchen, warmth. But it does it at 20 times the speed of reality.
Wait, it's literally on fast forward.
Super fast forward. It blasts this pattern up to the cortex over and over and over again. It's basically saying, here's the pattern. Did you get it? Here it is again. Did you get it now?
It's drilling the lesson into the slow state.
Precisely. And slowly, under this intense electrical bombardment, the silent anagram, the cortex starts to wake up. Its synapses strengthen. It matures. After enough sleep cycles, which can take days or even weeks for complex stuff, the cortex finally says, okay, I got it. I can hold the pattern myself.
And once the cortex has it,
The hippocampus lets go. The connection is severed. The memory is now officially consolidated.
this is exactly why pulling an all-nighter before an exam is useless.
Totally useless. If you study for 10 hours straight and then don't sleep, you have filled your hippocampus with notes, but you haven't done the transfer. The hippocampal traces are fragile by design. They fade naturally. Without the sleep replay, the cortex never learns the lesson. You wake up with nothing.
Sleep is the save button.
Sleep is absolutely the save button.
Now, here's where I want to challenge the narrative just a bit.
Go.
We've been talking about saving files, but there is a huge section in the research here on reconsolidation that makes me really question if saving is the right word at all.
This is the plot twist. This is section 6 of our dive.
Because we tend to think, I experience an event, it gets consolidated during sleep, and now it's a stone tablet in my mind. If I remember it 5 years later, I'm just reading the tablet.
And that assumption is fundamentally biologically wrong.
How wrong?
The research shows that memory is not a read-only file. It is read-write. Every single time you retrieve a memory, every time you tell that funny story at a party, you are physically unzipping the neural connection. You are making the memory labile again.
Labile meaning unstable.
Unstable. Liquid. You take it out of the vault and put it back on the construction table. And while it is on the table, it is incredibly vulnerable.
But vulnerable to what exactly?
To the present moment. Your current mood. The person you were talking to right then. Any new information you just learned. All of that gets actively woven into the memory trace. And then, when you are done thinking about it, the brain performs reconsolidation. It resaves the file.
But it saves the modified file.
Correct. You overwrite the old version entirely.
So, when I called up that image, I'm not actually remembering my childhood kitchen. I'm remembering the last time I remembered my childhood kitchen.
Exactly. It's a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. The original is long gone.
That is genuinely terrifying for things like eyewitness testimony.
It's a well-documented disaster for the legal system. But, and this is a massive but, it's an absolute miracle for therapy.
Explain that. How is having a malleable, unreliable memory a good thing?
Because if the file is editable, we can hack the edit, specifically for things like severe trauma and PTSD.
The notes mention a specific drug here called propranolol.
Right, so in PTSD, you have a memory of a trauma, and it is permanently glued to a massive, overwhelming emotional tag from the amygdala. Extreme fear, panic, physical sweating.
Every single time the person remembers the trauma, they feel the exact same panic.
And because of the reconsolidation mechanism we just talked about, feeling that panic while remembering it actually reinforces the panic. They resave the memory with a fresh coat of fear. It gets stronger. It's a vicious loop.
So how does propranolol break that loop?
Propranolol is a beta blocker. It specifically blocks the receptors for adrenaline and noradrenaline in the amygdala. So here's the clinical therapy. You have the patient intentionally recall the specific trauma. You force the memory to become labile. You put it on the table.
Okay, that sounds intense.
It is, but you give them propranolol right before. So the amygdala tries to scream and tries to pump in the fear response. But the receptors are blocked. The chemical signal physically cannot get through.
So they are remembering the factual event,
Okay.
but they aren't feeling the fear.
Exactly. They recall the facts of the memory without the emotional sting. And then this is the magic. The brain reconsolidates the memory in that calm, neutral state. It resaves the file, but without the high emotion tag attached to it.
You literally strip the metadata.
You strip the horror. The memory just becomes a boring historical fact. This happened to me. Instead of, I am dying right now. It proves that because memory is an active construction, it can be remodeled. we aren't permanently stuck with our past.
That is incredibly hopeful. It turns what sounds like a biological bug into a profound feature.
It's one of the most promising areas of clinical psychiatry right now.
Now, if we can edit memories, can we also delete them? Or rather, does the brain delete them for us automatically? This brings us to section 7, the art of active forgetting.
I love this topic so much. We live in a culture that completely obsesses over retention. We think forgetting is always a failure. Oh, I'm getting old, or I'm losing my edge.
But the research is saying forgetting is actually a goal.
It is an active, vital biological necessity. Your brain spends significant physiological energy specifically to forget things.
Why? Why spend precious energy to destroy the bridges you just built?
To prevent overfitting. The term borrowed from data science. Imagine you get bit by a dog.
Okay, got it.
If your memory is absolutely perfect, you remember that it was a golden retriever at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday while you were wearing blue shorts.
Right.
If you overfit that data, you might learn the rigid rule. Golden retrievers on Tuesdays while I wear blue shorts are highly dangerous. That is a completely useless rule for survival. You need to forget the shorts, you need to forget the specific time, you need to strip away the noise so you can generalize the broader rule. Dogs can bite.
So forgetting the specific details is what allows us to see the overall pattern.
Precisely. We have to prune the leaves to see the tree.
And physically, how does the brain delete these connections? Is there a literal delete key?
There are little Pac-Men.
Pac-Man, you're kidding.
Microglia. They are the immune cells of the brain. We used to think they were just passive janitors cleaning up dead cells. But we now know they are aggressive gardeners. They constantly patrol the synapses. They look for connections that are weak or unused connections that are marked by a specific protein called C1UA, and they literally eat them. They engulf the synapse and digest it.
That is so visceral. My brain is actively eating itself right now.
It's pruning. It's keeping the neural rosebush healthy by cutting away the dead branches. It's complement-dependent synaptic elimination.
And there's a specific chemical player mentioned here too, right? RAC1?
Yes, RAC1 is a protein that destabilizes the physical cytoskeleton of the neuron. It actively works to disassemble memories. In lab studies, if you inhibit RAC1 in mice, their memories actually last way longer.
Wait, why wouldn't we want that? Why not just inhibit RAC1 in humans and have super memory?
Because you would go crazy. You desperately need to clear the cache. This leads right into the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis.
Which is what, exactly?
During the day, you are constantly learning. You're triggering LTP. You are strengthening synapses everywhere all the time. That costs a massive amount of cellular energy. And physical space in the skull is limited. If you just kept building and building, your brain would saturate. You'd burn out.
So sleep isn't just for consolidating the important stuff.
It's also for downscaling the rest. During sleep, there's a global signal sent out to weaken everything just a little bit. The strong memories, the ones the hippocampus replayed, they survive the downscaling. The weak noise, like what you had for lunch, gets wiped out entirely. It resets the baseline so you have the capacity to learn new things tomorrow.
So forgetting is literally the price of plasticity.
Exactly. To learn the new, you absolutely must clear the old.
Before we wrap up the main discussion, we've been very, very hippocampus-centric today. But we should give a quick nod to the other players in the orchestra we briefly touched on. We mentioned HM kept his habits.
The basal ganglia, specifically the striatum. This is a deep, ancient, reptilian part of the brain. It handles the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward.
This is the autopilot we talked about.
Yes. When you first learn to play a chord on the guitar, it's all hippocampus, where do my fingers go, and prefrontal cortex, focus, focus. But once you've done it 10,000 times, the hippocampus totally checks out. The basal ganglia takes over. It becomes a hardwired, unconscious subroutine.
And what about the cerebellum?
The little brain, right at the back of your skull, it handles fine motor timing, balance, and classical conditioning, like the blink response. It's what keeps you from tripping over your own feet while your cortex is busy thinking about philosophy.
And finally, working memory. The thing that lets me remember a phone number just long enough to actually dial it.
That's the prefrontal cortex again. But it's not storage, it's RAM. It holds information for maybe 20, 30 seconds. It's extremely limited, maybe 5 to 7 items at a time. It's the mental scratch pad, not the hard drive.
So let's bring this all back to the very start. We closed our eyes and we saw the childhood kitchen. But now we know that image wasn't a pristine file. It was a live reconstruction. It was the hippocampus rapidly pulling strings in the visual cortex, mediated by the amygdala's emotional tag, and interpreted by the prefrontal cortex's search for meaning and context.
And it was likely a heavily edited version, updated by the last time you thought about it,
Yeah.
and stripped of irrelevant noise by the microglia.
It feels a lot less solid, but also somehow much more alive.
That is the beauty of it. We are not a static collection of fixed recordings. We are a dynamic, ongoing process. We are constantly updating our own story. That malleability is the exact mechanism that allows us to learn, to change our minds, and to heal from trauma.
I really want to leave you, the listener, with that one final haunting thought we teased earlier, the silent enneagram.
Oh man, this is the one that really keeps me up at night.
Because the Tanagawa study showed that the cortex holds a silent, encrypted copy of the memory from the very beginning. But we can't access it without the hippocampus to act as the key. So, if you have Alzheimer's disease, or if you are HM and you lose your hippocampus to surgery,
You lose the index card, you lose the decryption key.
but the library itself is still there.
The evidence strongly suggests the physical trace might still be sitting right there in the cortex. Silent. Unreachable, but physically present.
So are forgotten memories actually gone, or are they just locked inside a room in our own minds that we can no longer open?
We don't know for sure yet, but it implies that we might contain multitudes of experiences that we simply can no longer speak to.
And on that existential bombshell, go get some sleep. Your microglia have some gardening to do. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.